George Brauchler with you here. It's Thursday. I can't believe we're already here on September the 7th, 2023. Big ball of fire in the sky. We've been misled again. Of course, today was supposed to have a cloud attached to that ball of fire. That's not going to take place till tomorrow. It's 90 degrees, hot and dry. Tomorrow, 92, mostly sunny. And by mostly, that means until sometime where you've stopped caring about the sun. Saturday and Sunday have also been changed. Remember, at one point, just a day or two ago, Saturday and Sunday were thunderbolts coming out of clouds, which was bad because it was a baseball weekend. That's been changed to now Saturday, mostly sunny, and Sunday, a lightning bolt, few PM storms. Monday, and now Tuesday, again, shifting. Every single day, we seem to change our predictions for the future. Drops down all the way to 75 and 73 degree weather Monday and Tuesday, some showers and cooler. I have to tell you, folks, we were on the verge of not having a show today. It was very close. And Billy, you lived part of this. When I walked in, Billy announced to me in the gravest of tones, "Well, Billy, what did you tell me?"
It was awful, but we are out of coffee cups.
We were out of styrofoam cups, people.
Yeah, we do. We do these, the not
That's
really
right.
recyclable, the ones that you're not supposed to have. So
that's right.
That's what we have. Yeah,
one and done are these cups.
Yes.
And
right here.
I can't tell you, I cannot tell you how that coffee sustains me and I think the show over the course of the 4 hours that we're here. I'm driving here, and one of the things that helps get me to and through the front door is the idea that when I come in, there will be radio station coffee.
Yes.
Not great coffee, by the way, but
it's good.
Consumable, right? Like consumable. I'll drink 6 cups or so over the course of at least the first couple hours of the show. Like every break, at least until 8 o'clock, I'm up moving around looking for more coffee.
Oh yeah. And run to the bathroom.
And when
when
Billy announced that we were out of coffee cups this morning, it was almost like I heard him say, "Hey, official words come out. There's no Jesus." And I was like, "Wait, what? No, wait, what?"
Yeah. There's a cabinet in there where you have kind of the communal coffee cups, but it's always sketchy.
The communal coffee cups. I mean, look, the one I was about to use is now stuck over here next to Stefan's hair care products. And it was like Xfinity or something. And I'm like, oh, come on. How long have we been hanging on to that thing?
And they're smaller. These are big cups that we have. I mean, so
these are big cups. And I don't throw one of these away after every drink. I keep this all morning.
Yeah.
And then I throw it away.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Although I went and I found the secret staff.
Yeah. See, had Billy not found the secret staff, the level of energy here would have been a lot lower.
Yeah. I remembered. I'm like, oh yes, I know where there is a small amount of them that are hidden for just this type of emergency. So I went and absconded with about 50% of them. So we're okay for today and tomorrow.
Thank you for today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
The other thing that was also a little bit of a silver lining here is this is a station that has boycotted staplers as long as I've been here. Yes. Oh, they'll keep staplers here, but they're broken.
Yes,
like they don't working staplers.
They're warnings for other staplers.
That's right.
They leave around.
Don't come here. And what I've also discovered, I haven't witnessed it, but Billy has given me the firsthand account. Apparently, Pete stays in shape by abusing the staplers.
Yes, I love him to death, but I do not know what stapler or what harmed him in a previous life, but he has this vengeance. I've never seen somebody staple things so aggressively. I mean, it is a fist that starts above the shoulders and comes down. Wham, wham. And he sits there and he goes, "This one's broken." I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Wonder why.
Anyway, like it's a rock stapler or something.
Yeah. One of the things that you had to learn producing Pete's show is you had to learn how to unjam the stapler, because that would happen multiple times.
We had 2 or 3 of them laying around, just victims. Like there was a little chalk outline of the stapler on the desk where the crime occurred. Like, what in the hell?
Yeah. And he's like, "Well, this one doesn't work." I'm like, how come you're the only person that has issues with stapler? How come it's just you? I love you.
Because in coal country Pennsylvania, staplers were hoity-toity.
Yes.
And they were used to chisel out coal.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
There was a lot that went on yesterday. Some of it, I mean, we can obviously do the update thing. I again somehow managed to disappear an hour or so of my life talking with the good folks at India/United Airlines.
Oh, that's bad.
Oh, buddy, just the dreadful, I don't understand. It's a stupid first world problem, but I was on a flight sometime, I don't know, let's call it 2+ months ago.
Yeah.
End of June. It got canceled from Denver to Phoenix. I had to go out of my own pocket to buy a Southwest ticket to get there on time. Not a huge deal, other than that it's a huge deal, right? Like, I had to pay for another ticket. These clowns not only tell me back then, hey, don't worry about it, any canceled flight automatically refunded you. It's never automatically been anything. But I find out that one of the people I was traveling with for this conference, that they were given within 24 hours, they were like, well, did you get the 30,000 miles for the inconvenience? I'm like, 30,000 miles? That's like a legit flight. Like that. No. They're like, I got my ticket refunded and I got I'm like, wait, refund and the
Wow.
So I submitted a thing, about a month ago, a little bit after this. And I just got the email yesterday that said, hey, thank you so much for flying United. And once again, like anything you apply for, if it doesn't begin with congratulations or it is my pleasure to tell you, it's a rejection. I knew right away. And it says, we've determined that your flight is not eligible. I'm like, that can't be, because someone else on the flight got them. I mean, it can't be. Yeah. So I had to spend an hour on the phone with some woman desperate to try to stop the angry American on the phone from across the world, is my presumption, and try to figure it out. So really all that happens is you have to submit this thing to this person. The other thing that I find out about United, who my entire travel universe is with, right? Like, I crap talk Frontier because you can't reach a human customer service person. Well, you can reach people from India for United, no doubt. But when it comes to customer care, that change in the word from service to care, they are like some sort of cloistered monkdom, that they don't have phones, they don't have faxes, nobody can talk to them. I presume that you can't make eye contact with them in the hallways, but they're like, well, yes, I have forwarded this to my supervisor, who will forward it to customer care. I'm like, is there anyone we can just talk to at customer care? They're like, oh, they don't have a phone number.
No.
I'm like, well, how do they call out for pizza? Or how do they,
much like the monks, they're not allowed to speak. It's only like they get one word every 4 years. That's it.
And that word is no.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly how it works.
And just like I said, well, who do you appeal to if you don't like the decision from customer care? And it was like I asked a Rubik's Cube question or something. I don't understand. I'm like, what happens if they come back and they also say no? What's the next step? Because, and they're like, you're asking me weird questions. Like, what if the river started flowing backwards?
Not in the menu.
You know what I mean? Like this, I'm like, what is going on at United?
It's like you asked, what happens if Thanos gets all of the Infinity Stones? They have no idea.
So there was that. Then Grammy had his last 8th grade cross country meet. Now there's the districts are this weekend. He just didn't qualify. And I know he's bummed about it. I know he's feeling it, because last year he was running a lot faster, but last year he was also a lot smaller. He was just really, really light. And now he's been packing on the size in a good way. I mean, this kid's been working out like a fiend. And you're just not as fast. So he did run his best time of the season. He took 2 minutes off his time from about a month ago, which is great.
That's really good.
And that was good. And we ended up doing that. And then I came home and said, well, Fat Daddy has to run, because I'm still committed to this marathon at the end of October. Really a decision I question more and more loudly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it used to just be a little murmur in my head, and now I scream out loud.
Yes.
While I'm putting on my running shoes. What have you done? What is wrong with you? Why did you feel compelled to do this?
This is awful.
And so we went out and ran another 4 miles, man. And the kid's kid's really good, in good shape. He's fun to be with and all that stuff. And
then when you're running with him every once in a while, do you push him into the bushes just to gain a little bit onto him?
No,
I'm just saying that you can get a half a block or so.
Push him into some bushes does sound good.
Yeah,
but I don't know. And then we had the Hello Fresh, and it was Grammy's time to make it. And so he fired up these delicious quesadillas. But at one point I walked by and I'm like, I'm grabbing it up. Everyone grabs their own. And I'm like, was there some sort of a sour cream concoction with this or something? Because I see a bowl with white residue. And he's like, well, there was. And I said, well, what happened? He goes, I had to dump it down the sink. I'm like, what? Why? What's
why?
wrong with the
Yeah.
sour? He's like, I put too much water in it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you put water in sour cream. Apparently that's how the HelloFresh people stretch it out. And so we ended up still very, very delicious. We ended up finishing the Netflix quarterback series just in time. Great series, by the way, just in time for tonight's first official game of the season between the Chefs and some team I can't remember.
Now, you know, quesadillas, that's like tortillas and a protein and cheese and
some vegetables sometimes.
They sell that stuff at the store. It's very easy.
Yeah,
to make those.
Yeah, believe me, that sounds like it's just that easy to do.
It is.
It's not like that.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
it's not.
It's not. It's not a complicated menu item.
But it's just one menu item amongst many that show up in the box. Like sometimes if you don't go in and you tell it, I want this, that, or the other, it tries to guess for you. Like, don't you want the pan-seared salmon peanut butter reduction something?
Now that's something to get HelloFresh on it. HelloFresh
that's in there. That's in there.
They're sending you quesadillas. They're shorting you. You're making
a
bad choice yet again.
I'm telling you that's not true because it is a way to get the kids involved in the you're making dinner thing. Yeah. That's how it works. You start letting them know that, see, you can make dinner. You got it.
The ingredients are the same, whether you can get them at the grocery store or the HelloFresh that'll charge you more, and the kids can still make it. You can even write it down on a piece of paper. I've tried it.
Billy, there's so many things that you say out loud. That's when you say them, they sound like common sense, but I'm just telling you, it's not a real option. It's a pretend option.
I did pizza dogs yesterday.
You did show me the picture. Those looked ridiculously good.
They are stupid. Way too many nitrates and not healthy. But again, when you're doing the hot dog thing, doesn't matter. And again, you do pizza dogs. It's super easy. You did it since the kids, and Kitty was coming home early, so decided to make a lunch for her and I, and just threw the pizza dogs together. And it's just you make the hot dogs however you want. That's a key. Got to do the beef ones. Make sure you're getting quality hot dog.
And you're broiling, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, broiling is to finish it off. Yeah, you just boil the hot dogs, and then you take the hot dog, you put it into the bun, and then you add the marinara sauce, just like you would ketchup, and you top it with mozzarella cheese and a couple of pieces of pepperoni, and then you just throw that in the broiler for about 2 minutes, and it crisps up the bun. And it sounds like a weird combination, but it is absolutely fantastic. And the key is making sure that bun is crisp because it gives you the crunch that you get with the pizza, crust. So it's fantastic. Next,
how many do you eat?
I can down 2. I mean,
okay,
if I'm being silly, I could do 3, but that's stupid. And I'm trying to be better about that. Yeah, afterwards it seems very stupid.
There's
but I
probably a time when
you're going to tell me you've never done spaghetti tacos.
Nope.
What?
Never. I have no idea what you just said out loud again. It was like you asked for a customer care's phone number.
Just gonna bang my head on the microphone.
No, who here has heard of spaghetti tacos?
How could you? Spaghetti tacos are fantastic.
They might be, but I've never heard of them.
Wonderful kids' food. In fact, shout out to one of the best Nickelodeon TV shows of all time, iCarly. They are the ones that originally did that. Spaghetti tacos. In fact, it is a very funny episode where they're making fun of Bobby Flay, celebrity chef. It's a total spoof on Bobby Flay as the character inside of it, but it does spaghetti tacos. And you just make spaghetti like you normally do, but you take your meatballs and you slice them into quarters, and then you just put the spaghetti with the meatballs inside of the taco shell. And again, it sounds very strange. It's great for kids because, it's handheld spaghetti. They're not throwing it everywhere. But more importantly, the salt and the crunch mixing with the sweet side of the marinara, especially if it's heavy on oregano, it's really good. It is a very, very good quality taste. Yeah, and super easy. Kids love it. If you've got young kids at home,
have to figure this out. We should have this posted on the website. Billy's Culinary Oddities or Delights.
Lots of oddities. Again, had to figure out how to feed the kids and make it entertaining. So that was one of the things. Spaghetti tacos, and that is a go-to. If you're a grandparent and you got the kids coming over, or you have young kids at home, spaghetti tacos. It is a home run and super easy to do. So easy.
That's gonna probably not tonight either, because we have some fencing for little G-man Jeffrey, and by the way, who can now drive himself, which is magical because it's a 5:30 to 8 o'clock thing between the lesson.
Oh geez.
And then Grandma Lemon Ding Dong has himself a little speed training. Some of the stuff that these kids do, we never did this. I never had this kind of individualized stuff. And am I doing too much? I don't know. But the kid's got a passion for it, and it's not like he's mailing it in. This kid works out and works harder than anybody I know. I mean, just constantly out there doing it. So I want to keep feeding the passion, and we'll see what happens there. And then, buddy, we wake up and all of a sudden, man, it's the last day of the week and we're heading into the weekend. I love these 4-day weeks, man.
Oh, it's fantastic. We got to do this more often. The Jetsons said we'd be doing it, but they lied to us.
That's right.
You can't believe a cartoon. Who can you believe?
Let's talk about someone else that's finding it hard to believe that they may not be on the ballot here in Colorado, and that's DJT. Did you see that lawsuit thing?
I did.
We're definitely going to talk about this later in the show, folks. Don't get me wrong, but wow.
Yeah, that's surprising. I didn't think it was going to get here because, again, the idea that he even has that legitimate shot. He's lost the state twice. Is he really that much of a threat? I don't know if it's that or it's that this was, my presumption is this was a coordinated effort discussed amongst many, even outside of Colorado, that this would be a good test case to do it in for that very reason, because there really isn't much to lose here, whether he makes it on the ballot or not. But the names on this lawsuit, and folks, if you missed it, first off, I'm going to claim credit on behalf of Billy and I. We saw this coming way down the road. I mean, we were mentioning this a few weeks ago. Last week, we had on Chris Murray to talk about it. And then Billy had started reaching out to Griswold's office, and they were just interestingly not responsive. Yeah. And Phil's office said, talk to Griswold's office.
Yeah, Phil's office. Don't look at us. Don't look over here. Nothing to see here. And then boom, yesterday, a lawsuit that is, this is Norma Anderson is on this. I think Norma is a former Lakewood, or at least Jefferson County state senator. I've known her since I was a kid. Michelle Priola, don't know the Michelle part, but that last name sure sounds a lot like Kevin Priola, who was the lifetime Democrat who portrayed himself as a Republican for several election cycles when it served his purposes. Then there's Claudine Camarade, I don't know who that is. Krista Kafer, who I know Krista very well. Krista's a friend. And no matter what you think of Krista as, a Republican or conservative, I don't think she's a Republican. I like her, man. I think she's good people. Kathy Wright and Christopher Castillion. Christopher Castillion, that name sounds familiar to me. Maybe an attorney or something that maybe he did something political, but otherwise they filed a lawsuit against Jenna Griswold in her official capacity. And that lawsuit also is against Donald J. Trump. Some of the attorneys on this list of the petitioners include Mario Nicolai. Many of you know who that is. Martha Tierney. And then a bunch of people. Oh, Eric Olson. It says Eric Olson on here. I think that's Eric Olson, who used to be the Solicitor General for the state of Colorado. I think that's kind of a big deal. And then a bunch of other people who I don't know. And it doesn't mean anything that I don't know them. I'm just telling you, I looked at the names and they don't resonate with me. I just don't travel around in those circles. But we're the first. It's got national news. It's top of the fold, if you will, on Drudge Report, right under DeSantis's big donors leave him like a leper or something. I can't remember what that is. But that's going to be a pretty big deal. There is a lot to talk about there, and we'll start covering that in the 7 o'clock hour.
I think you got something there about the idea that we're the test case, that we're the first one out of the
so.
box, because I had been hearing rumblings that there are some people on the Republican side of the aisle that are looking at some, what I would say, very red states to also file similar suits. And the idea being, and again, I would assume that it is coordinated at some level, whether or not they're having meetings, et cetera. Don't know, but there's got to be some sort of coordination. The theory behind it was that if they can get just a handful of states or the right states, they can prevent Trump from ever achieving 270. There's no way that he could get the electoral ballots in order to reach 270 as a limit. Thereby, even if they don't win across a large number of states, again, that was what I was hearing.
It makes sense, I guess. But merits aside, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. You talk about setting fire to a portion of the country. That's the way to do it, man. If you want to convince people who are already inclined to believe that the system is set up to rob the person that could be the president of the opportunity to do it, this is it. If you wanted to prove to them how broken this system is, this would be the way to do it.
What I can't also figure out on the Dem side is the strategy on all of this. I can't figure out what their strategic goal is. I understand the idea of not facing Trump. However, every game model that I've seen shows Biden does better against Trump than any other of the possible choices on the Republican Party. And I find it strange, again, not so strange that it's the Democrats doing it, because they shoot themselves in the foot on a routine basis. But I find it weird that they would be participating in part
I know.
on an effort to deny the weakest candidate. That just seems like in their mind, as far as, again, head-to-head matchups. I know lots of people believe other things, but I'm just saying that over the course of the polling, Donald Trump comes up the most likely to lose to Joe Biden. And out of all the Republican nominees, that's the one that I find interesting is why would you be involved in a situation to try to get what you feel is your weakest opponent out of the game? I don't know. That just
I
seems,
don't know.
But then again, it's Democrats.
And except in this lawsuit, there's Republicans and independents in there too.
Yeah, there are. Yeah,
I don't know, man.
Which gives cover.
This cannot end well for America.
Not at
This
all.
just can't end well for America. Defeat this guy at the polls and move on.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, but this idea that we are so either horrified by the prospect of him winning, and they must really believe he's winning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
nobody's filing a lawsuit to keep Vivek Ramaswamy off the ballot because of some problem with his parents' immigration state. You know what I mean? No one's going down that road. If they're that horrified of him, I don't know what to say, but this is going to be a huge issue moving forward. My hope is that the courts here act very quickly and decisively and put this thing to bed so it ends. However, there's no decision that will be made out of a Denver district court that won't be immediately appealed and then immediately appealed and then likely on its way to the nine folks in robes out there in DC.
This only ends at the Supreme Court. And the weird part, we talked about this off air. The other part that I'm having a hard time understanding, I get the strategy and what they're saying about it, but what I don't understand is that we go back to post 2020 election and what President Trump at the time was asking Mike Pence to do. And the argument that I've always had is, wait, our founding fathers would not have put in a mechanism to say this one dude who happens to be, or woman at the time, whoever, gets to be vice president, gets to decide what electoral votes we count. That seems like a flaw in the system. That doesn't seem like something the founding fathers say, let's do all these votes and let this one person decide what votes we're going to count.
I can't believe
it. That. And yet here, we're hearing from Democrats and Republicans, no, we were just focusing on the wrong person. The person we should actually focus on is the Secretary of State because they obviously have enough power to decide who gets on the ballot individually based on their own ruling. Excuse me? What? Pardon me? Where in the setup as far as how we put together our states and our voting processes that we're going to say, yeah, but this one person gets to decide who's actually on the ballot? That seems like a flaw in the logic. Again, I'm not saying that it's a winning or losing argument. I just think that it is a flaw in the logic that we are talking about the idea in any situation that one person has the ability to decide whose votes count or who people are going to get to vote for in the election. I just convince me of that. Please help me understand why one person would be given that power unconstrained. I don't get it. I don't know.
It's a very fair question. I don't know the answer to that. But maybe we'll get some answers from Chris Murray in the second.
I hope so.
There's also something. This one, we'll try to get this guy on the show here. But there's apparently a legislator who is named Joe Mabry, but he calls himself Javier. I presume that's because it's his middle name and he's in a party where that sounds better. That's my best guess. Nonetheless, Javier Mabry is a representative out of Southwest Denver. Yesterday, there was a report issued, a 14-page report after a 3-month investigation of a shooting that took place in Aurora. You'll remember we had Art Acevedo, Aurora's chief of police, on the radio to talk about this. This was a 14-year-old kid who, along with a bunch of other presumed teenagers, went into a local liquor store and committed an armed robbery. They demanded certain things from the store owner, or at least whoever was behind the counter. All of this, by the way, on video. And when he didn't act immediately, this 14-year-old kid pulled up his shirt to reveal what appeared to be a gun. What, by the way, all of the other kids that were with this guy that have so far been apprehended believed was also a gun. He complied. The cops then showed up. They saw this casing going on. They tried to intervene to catch these armed robbers. And this 14-year-old kid with the gun took off on a run. There was a physical altercation with law enforcement on body cam. You can hear the officer saying, let it go, don't grab it, let it go. Meanwhile, this 14-year-old continued to grab for the gun. The officer shot and killed him. 3 months of an investigation, a 14-page report, which is publicly available. I have it right here in front of me. I printed it off, making it clear that everybody, perhaps even that 14-year-old kid, thought that what he had been given was a real gun. All the people with him thought it was a gun. The cops thought it was a gun. It turned out it was a simulated gun, a toy
It's a
gun.
pellet gun. So not necessarily not like a cap gun. It is a pellet gun. It does fire projectiles.
Yeah.
Which is important. And the reason that for me is important is because that dictates the shape of the cylinder.
Yep.
And if it is a cap gun or even a squirt gun, they will have or cap something on the end to make it bright red or bright
orange or something like that.
So
neon.
It is, so it's obvious in those situations. The other thing is there is a statement in there where the kid is saying, all right, you got me, or something like that in there. And that's what the people defending him are hanging their hat on and saying that he's saying that. Now in the body cam, they're saying that the kid is grabbing for the gun, and you can't see that in the body cam. However, there is surveillance footage from 2 other locations, and that's where you get to see the kid's actions, where he absolutely is going for the gun. And the other part for me in this conversation is that if you have a weapon that, again, looks like a simulated firearm, it's not a Nerf gun that is bright green and orange, that it looks like a simulated firearm, I expect law enforcement to treat it as a live firearm, not to treat it as a possible firearm.
He wanted the shop owner, the liquor store owner, to believe it was real. The other, armed robbers with him also believed it was real. But this is what I'm building to. This Representative Javier Maybury, who clearly didn't watch one millisecond of the body cam or any of the other available video, didn't read the 14-page report, none of those things, doesn't represent Aurora, tweeted out Jordell, that's the name of the 14-year-old who was the armed robber who was shot and killed. Jordell was a child. He was unarmed, utter garbage, and he had surrendered. This was murder. Now, that from just anybody in the community, you would say that's just hyperbolic nonsense, unproven, not provable, disproven hyperbolic nonsense. This clown right here is in the legislature. This guy is a guy that gets to vote on laws that either go after the cops or go after the bad guys. And we know which way this dude leans. This dude has come. And by the way, also a claimed licensed attorney. Now, he's been an attorney for a cup of coffee since like November of 2019. That's right before the pandemic, and appears to practice law when he's not out sucking off the government dole here for some fighting off people who are being evicted. He's fighting off landlords from exercising their rights when it comes to eviction. Nonetheless, this clown, I've tweeted out to him, hey, please come on the radio. Let's have the debate. I'm happy to have the conversation. And we'll just continue to see if this is just like many of the others who don't have the guts to come on, or like some of those that have. We've had plenty of Democrat legislators on this show. I just don't know if this is a guy who's willing to. Of course, he has a tremendous amount of experience in criminal law, and by that I mean the same amount that the Attorney General has. Just really frustrating to see somebody as an elected official quickly take to social media to flap his gums about the fact that this was murder. No evidence of it, but that it was murder.
Yeah, and he's already decided that based on what he has seen. He's made the determination. And this, to me, is vastly different than cases like we have Elijah McClain here, where McClain was not involved in any sort of a crime. McClain had not displayed any sort of a weapon.
Yeah, done nothing.
McClain was walking down the street, and within 30 seconds, the police had his hands on him, and everything went south, and things went on there. That, to me, that's wrongful death. But in this case, we have a child, and it is awful that is a child involved in a robbery who has displayed what everybody else feels is a weapon and continues to have that weapon while running from the police. There were other actions that he could have taken. I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, that in times that police never do anything wrong, because things do get difficult. There's a arrest that went on in Grand County in which they are looking at how the police officers dealt with an individual, that things can go sideways. But in this case, the kid represented it as if it was a firearm, and was not involved when you're talking about surrender. He was still trying to get a hold of the alleged firearm. And at the time, the police have to assume that it is a real one. You have to assume that when
every
you see
single
a firearm,
time,
it's real. Have to.
especially.
You
And
can't
this
do it
wasn't
any
like
other
a
way.
kid who was out like shooting at cans on the back fence, and the
No.
cops are like, "Oh my God, dude, it wasn't like that
Yes.
at all." They had just committed an armed robbery, and Mabry probably doesn't know this because he's only an attorney and a Democrat and a legislator. But the way the law reads for things like armed robbery and felony menacing, it doesn't matter if it's a real or what is described as a simulated weapon. The law, just like the cops, treat it the same.
Yeah.
But this dude right here is just into throwing bombs and trying to keep people who aren't paying for their rent from getting evicted. But
And
I'm just
also,
interested in having this clown on.
He's looking for the low information voters. He's looking for the people that just get mad at it. And that's what he's trying to do. And to be fair, law is hard, even for the lawyers. It's difficult. So, you never know.
Yeah, I just, this is the kind of thing that this is where we are, by the way, with rhetoric in modern politics. This is why the divide between us does nothing but expand. Nothing.
Yeah.
Because this kind of garbage, and it's not just because he's a Dem. I mean, that obviously helps make him, dim-witted when it comes to things like the cops, but it's not just that. It's the fact that there are people on both sides who are willing to just go. We were just talking, and I know we got to go, but we were just talking about Huckabee yesterday saying, hey, this may be the last election where it's ballots instead of bullets. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? What are you doing? Is this to get advertisers and you get eyeballs? Because this is crazy talk. I don't get it. Listen, Billy not chiming in tells me he's really super concerned about the place we've set the clock today as we punch out of here. We're going to cut away for a break, come back, get the good stuff. That's the Thorpe Report, and then You Choose the News. You stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. I've hosed Billy. Let's see if he can recover. It's the Thorpe Report.
Yes, it is, sir. Let's see what happens. As you said, big, bright, burning balls of flames in the sky, both today, tomorrow, Saturday.
Balls?
Yeah, multiple. I just want to say balls in the air. And they're big. Big balls on the air. Yes. Alrighty. Enough juvenile fun. 80 degrees by Sunday, 75, cooling and possible showers next week. So you can save it and save water. Don't shower until you stand in the rain next week. It's what I'm going to do. Alrighty. At least as far as you know. We already talked about John Keller, an 18th Judicial District Attorney, not filing charges in the Aurora case. Also, Boulder Police Department reported 7 drug-related arrests and confiscation of a large amount of drugs Wednesday. They targeted enforcement with Boulder County Drug Task Force, response to numerous overdoses in the area of Central Park and Pearl Street Mall. One of the people arrested was a man who had previously taken into custody for stabbing somebody outside of Boulder's municipal building. Who would have known? He's done it several times. So a bunch of them. But he also was released on a personal recognizance bond August 22nd, which means he left jail without posting a cash bond. And he was, surprise, rearrested.
No.
I know.
That never happens.
No, it never
That's not
happens when we
predictable.
release the people that do the crimey stuff back into the population.
No.
They always say,
Come on.
I shouldn't do anything more wrong. I have obviously learned my lesson.
I've only
by
stolen the
facing-
one car.
Yes, by facing no consequences. Obviously, that's how it works. It doesn't even work that way with dogs. Okay, now 2 of the people charged in the death of a 20-year-old who died after a rock was thrown through a windshield are going to face additional attempted murder charges for a separate incident of, rock throwing through cars. They're getting new attempted first-degree murder and second-degree assault charges.
Wow.
Good, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Man, it's such a horrible case.
It's absolutely horrible. And just, again, the power of stupidity when young males get together. When Thornton police responded to a disturbance between a man and 2 women at Walmart on July 18th, the man wanted to make sure the officers knew something, that he is a police officer. He said, I'm off duty, Adams County, by the way. Yep, the Ezekiel Spots told officers that, according to body camera footage that has been obtained by our friends over at Channel 9. He currently works at the Adams County Jail and has worked for the sheriff's office for 17 years. And this is the guy that punched women in the face. That's what he did.
Well,
That's great.
That doesn't sound good for the police.
Not at all. No. But what may sound good is a 24-year-old man is going to spend more than 20 years in Colorado prison after being convicted of killing a 72-year-old Broomfield man in August of 2021. Yeah, he was breaking into unlocked vehicles in the area of Sunridge Circle. The victim approached him and was shot in the head by the guy stealing the cars, because that's obviously what you do.
Shot the dude in the head, 71 years old. Guy's got tattoos up and down his neck and his face. Looks like a real pleasant member of society. Jury could not get to unanimity on murder, so he only got convicted of manslaughter. He got that ridiculous 24-year sentence, but to be honest, given Colorado's broken sentencing laws, he will be parole eligible most likely in somewhere in that 8-year range for murdering somebody. Manslaughtering somebody over their car. Our system is broken.
It is. Again, when you're going out and doing the robbing stuff and you bring the gun with you, what were you going to do with it if it wasn't to shoot somebody?
Self-defense?
Yeah, I know. So what were you possibly going to do with it? Suncor Energy is facing civil penalties and going to have to pay $760,000 after the EPA announced a settlement with the refinery for air pollution violations. They were spewing too much of the crap into the air, and so now they're going to have to pay a bunch of money for it. And then who knows? Maybe we get to breathe more of the crappy air. Also, we're going to talk here at 7 o'clock, Chris Murray, 14th Amendment. We are the test case for whether or not the Secretary of State has the power to just say, poof, you're no longer on the ballot. Yeah, so that'll be fun. That's all I got.
Buddy, that's plenty. I'm going to try to cut away for a quick break here, come back and get the good stuff. Maybe even a sponsor. We don't know yet. Stick around for You Choose the News. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's that time. Buckle up. You choose the news with William.
Yes, sir. It is that time where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news, where we have done with these papers, scoured the interwebs to find absolutely stupid stories, giving them ridiculous names to play this fake radio news game because they pay us for it. Yeah, I know. Who knew this is what I was going to get paid for? My mom is so proud. All righty, sir. Here are your headlines today. Headline number 1, it's how they do it in Canada. Headline number 2, dreams of revenge. Headline number 3, SS Minnow goes extreme. And headline number 4, what's in a name? It's How They Do It in Canada, Dreams of Revenge, SS Minnow Goes Extreme, or What's in a Name?
SS Minnow, baby.
SS Minnow Going Extreme. Now, this may seem crazy, but Life at Sea Cruises is looking for a new way that you can enjoy the wonderful time that you have on those cruises. Recently, here in November, they have a brand new excursion that is going to give you a chance to go round the world. The issue is you're not coming back for 3 years. Yes, just like the SS Minnow was a 3-hour tour, well, they're going extreme at Life at Sea Cruises. It is now a 3-year tour. It's just like that song, The Cruise That Never Ends. Yeah, I just keep thinking about who's the market, who's the people that can go, yeah, for 3 years, I get nothing to do.
I don't know, but I see these stories in my feed all the time, man. Someone that's like, I just spent a year at
Yes,
sea.
I
And here are
know.
the lessons I learned.
What I'm thinking here is the only people are super rich people, which probably have their own yacht, or it's the retired people. And if it's the retired people and we're going on for 3 years, we're going to lose some along the way. What are we doing with the bodies? I have questions.
Burial at sea.
Exactly. What do you do? And at that point, just make it a big air cannon and shoot them off. And
Boom.
Okay, sorry. Okay, second choice. It's How They Do It in Canada, Dreams of Revenge, or What's in a Name?
What's in a name?
Yeah, what's in a name? Recently, a woman was admitted to the hospital after being stung dozens of times by a swarm of angry bees.
Dang.
This woman and her sister and the 8-year-old sister's daughter were walking their horses along a hilltop in Jersey. She was stung more than 60 times, needed to be put onto an IV drip after going into anaphylactic shock. Her niece was
Good
requiring
Lord.
treatment. If only there was a way we could find out. Well, it should have been obvious because we are talking about Caroline Honeycomb.
No, that's not her real name.
Yes, it is. It is
Whoa,
her real name.
no.
Hey, Caroline Honeycomb. Who could have known that Miss Honeycomb was going to be attacked by the angry bees?
Any chance at all that her home is known by her neighbors is the hideout?
Exactly.
The honeycomb
Yes.
hideout.
That'd
Welcome
be
to the
fantastic.
honeycomb
Welcome
hideout.
All righty. Our final choice this morning, sir. It's How They Do It in Canada or Dreams of Revenge?
I'm interested to know how they do it in Canada.
How do they do it in Canada? Well, this we're talking about, Canada does experience some crime like we do. And recently, Canadian police were having to stop a guy that was speeding away. He was in the car and he had stolen it. And he's speeding down Highway 5. And eventually, the police come upon the wreckage of the car. It is actually in flames, the stolen vehicle. They get the guy out of the vehicle. But how? How could it possibly have been stopped
Great
with law
question.
enforcement in Canada? Because it hit a bear carcass on the road.
What?
Yes. Yes. The guy's speeding away and he comes over the top. It comes around a corner and boom, hits a bear
I
carcass.
get like a squirrel, maybe even
know.
a raccoon,
Exactly.
a deer, but a
Yes,
bear?
A bear. Yes. A bear carcass on the road. He hits it and the car bursts into flames. That's how they do in Canada.
The car couldn't bear it. Hello.
Oh, I can't believe you
Boo.
just did that. I'm not even going to give you the advertiser for that one. We're
Oh,
going
I
straight to the
ruined it.
close.
Come
Oh,
on.
yeah. I can't follow that up. What
Buddy,
am I supposed to do with that one?
I don't know, but you. Oh, now I feel like a host
That
because
was
you told me
wonderful.
there was some good one.
This one's good.
Now
This
we're
one-
going to have to
yeah.
save this for
This
tomorrow.
has,
I
this
guess
has
for
my
the
kids'
losers.
input. It's very
Yeah,
good.
now I feel bad. I said it. Come on. Now listen. When we come back, we're going to talk about this latest effort to keep you from being able to vote for the candidate of your choice. Yep, Chris Murray, super lawyer. When we come back, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here at 710 KNUS. It is a big fat Thursday, the 7th of September already. We're well past Labor Day. Football starts tonight. Kansas City Chiefs versus whatever team they're going to beat. We also have politics in front of us. No, not just the 2023 elections. And frankly, the only things that matter on the ballot are the Tabor-related things and Preparation HH. We've talked about those a ton. But I want to give us a shout out as well as our next guest. Last week, we had a conversation about this growing conversation itself about the 14th Amendment and whether or not Section 3 might act as a barrier to President Trump gaining access to the ballot in any state, maybe all the states. And so we had on with us a super attorney, wicked smart guy, foolish enough to risk whatever remaining credibility he has by coming back onto the show a week later. His name is Chris Murray. Sir, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. I feel like with the timing on this one, you've got a new nickname. I think it's George Stradamus.
That matches the tattoo, so that's perfect. It's like such a long story, but it was in college, and it begins with, I predict where we'll end up later tonight. And then I go, see, George, anyway, that's horrible. Nonetheless, so this lawsuit gets filed. Did you have a sense that this was coming at all, Chris? You kind of have your finger on the pulse of stuff like this.
So I'll be perfectly frank with you. I had heard a rumor that this was being worked on, and that it was possible that Colorado was going to be one of the test states. I would not be surprised to see a similar lawsuit get filed in some other states over the next couple of weeks.
Any idea what states those are?
I think Wisconsin is highly likely. And I think North Carolina is highly likely.
Why those states and us? Best guess.
So honest to goodness, that I don't know. I think it must be something to do with the procedures that the lawyers involved think might be available there and potentially a sympathetic audience in terms of the Secretary of State or an elections commission.
Now, this particular lawsuit, and I imagine it'll follow this model in those other states, isn't filed by like the head of the Democrat Party or the opposing party. Instead, it's filed by a bunch of people who I don't think are necessarily Democrats. Now, if it's the Norma Anderson, former state senator from out of Jeffco, I know who that is. We know who Krista Kafer is, obviously. Do you know Michelle Priola, any relation to Democrat Kevin Priola?
You know, I think that may be his wife, but I'm not sure.
Do you know any of these other names on here? Am I missing something?
No, I mean it looks like a group of mostly affiliated Republicans and a couple unaffiliated.
One of the attorneys that's filed this is Mario Nicolai. He may be a Republican now, but he used to be for sure. And then some other names I don't recognize, but you might from having done this. Martha Tierney, do you know who that is?
Martha is the general counsel for the Colorado Democratic Party.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's helpful to know. That's huge. How about, I thought I recognized this name as a former Solicitor General for us, but Eric Olson, is that right?
Eric Olson is the immediate former Solicitor General of the state of Colorado under Phil Weiser. He's also, I'll just say, obviously, we'll get into the merits of this case in a second, but he's an excellent lawyer. He's a former trial lawyer at a firm called Bartlett Beck, the top flight guy.
But he had been the Solicitor General for Phil. Who's the Solicitor General now?
You know what? She just got hired a couple months ago, and I should know the answer to that question.
No, that's all right.
I'll get it. I'll be able to answer it for you before we're off the air.
The only reason that it's worth discussing in terms of who used to work for who and whose party affiliation may be this is because, one, this is highly political, but two, because the lawsuit is against, in part, Jenna Griswold. Who's going to show up in court to defend Jenna Griswold?
Well, I would think that it's going to be attorneys from the Public Officials Unit in Phil Weiser's office. But I also get into the real question is, what will those attorneys show up and say?
That's right. That's right. Now, tell us what you think the range of legitimate options are. I mean, could they roll over and play dead and say we agree and then just try to get this moved along, or do they put a big pitch battle here? Like, what else is an option?
Yeah, so I think there is a huge range of options. The roll over and agree, anything's possible. I think what the practical version of that would look like is instead they do something like this. Boy, Your Honor, this is a sticky wicket. We don't know what we should do here. We'll do whatever the court says, but we're not going to substantively defend this. Boy, they got some real claims here. You've got to decide this within 5 days. Just tell us what to do, and if you say to keep Donald Trump off the ballot, we'll do it. They may also say this has been filed too soon, right? So they may defend it procedurally and say, hey, no, you got to wait till it's closer to election qualifying time because Donald Trump has not yet paid his ballot access fee or turned in his petitions. Or they could mount a pitched battle and say, hey, there's no cause of action here. You can't do this.
Interesting. Real quick clarification to a texter who's been listening said, hey, ask Chris if Eric Olson was the guy that argued 303 creative before the Supreme Court.
Yes, he is that guy.
Okay. So this particular lawsuit now, it's also filed against Donald Trump. Is that weird at all? I mean, they filed it against Secretary of State Griswold to say, hey, you can't put him on the ballot, but then they filed it against Donald Trump. Is that normal?
It's not really normal in the sense that the only person who has the power, to the extent that you're trying to keep somebody on or off the ballot under the statute that they're suing under here, the proper defendant is the Secretary of State. But, George, you know this, like, hey, if your rights are going to be affected by a lawsuit and your interests are not adequately represented by the existing parties to the lawsuit, you can do something called intervene. And I think they sued Donald Trump here partially just to head off the procedural necessity of Donald Trump himself intervening in the case to protect his right to go on the ballot.
Let's get into the substance of this thing. It's a huge pleading. I mean, this thing is over 100 pages long. A lot of it is basically recitations of clips from references to media coverage of things that took place on January the 6th to set the stage for the idea that this was undoubtedly an insurrection or rebellion, I suppose. But and then getting into Trump's involvement in all this, just at the 30,000 foot level, what's your impression of this particular petition?
I mean, it is it's sort of, I don't want to be like, super unfair to the quality of the writing, but it's basically like a factual dog's breakfast, right? It lays out anything and everything that anybody in the country could ever have to say about what's wrong with Donald Trump, why he should never have been president in the first place, and then what he should or should not have done on January 6th, and why the speech he gave and the actions he took before January 6th, were inciting an insurrection, and then why his failure to immediately deploy the army to put this thing down also amounted to supporting an insurrection.
The legal portion of this, not just the factual allegations, but the legal portion. Any thoughts on that?
Yes.
And by the way, tell us what their legal arguments are. I presume that you and I are talking about the same thing because we both read it. It's a mistake. I want the listeners to understand too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the legal portion of this is sort of the interesting part of it, right? Because there's essentially two arguments made here, but I mean, it really all comes down to one. Okay, they're suing under a state statute, Colorado Revised Statute Section 141204, which is titled "Names on Ballots," and it's names on ballots for the presidential primary election, and it basically provides, hey, here's how you get your name on the ballot for different types of election, right? And at the end of it, right, and this is subsection 4, it talks about any challenge to the listing of any candidate on the presidential primary election ballot, right, has to be filed in writing with the district court. And it has to be filed no later than 5 days after the filing deadline, but there's no front end restriction. But basically what they're saying is, we're making a challenge under this law to Donald Trump's eligibility to be on the presidential primary ballot. And the basis of our challenge is he's disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the disqualification clause, because he engaged in a rebellion or insurrection.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then there's a second claim as well.
Well, that's just a declaratory judgment claim, basically saying that we want a declaratory judgment that Donald Trump is an insurrectionist.
Isn't all of this tied inextricably with the 14th Amendment, though? Like, we're never going to be like, sometimes you can make an argument that is tied so closely to Colorado law that the appellate review would end at the Colorado Supreme Court. There's no chance of that happening here, right? Like, this thing has to invoke the 14th Amendment.
Well, correct. I mean, it does. I mean, and the complaint, the basis of the complaint is the 14th Amendment's disqualification. The theory goes like this: Colorado law allows us to challenge whether or not somebody can be on the presidential primary ballot, right? The basis of our challenge is the 14th Amendment has disqualified Donald Trump. Therefore, keep him off the ballot, right? And so, of course, that goes back to, well, is the 14th Amendment legally the disqualification clause? Can a private party just wander into a state or federal court and say, hey, I think I'd like to enforce this against somebody? And I just think the answer to that is clearly no, and that's why this will fail.
So hold on. So that's a big thing you've just said there. That feels like a standing issue.
Agreed. And I think this will be subject to a motion. I mean, it ought to be subject to a motion to dismiss, right? Whether or not Secretary of State Griswold will make this argument, I don't know, but I would anticipate that Donald Trump would make this argument, right? Because this argument has prevailed all over the country in challenges last year to members of Congress. I think, as I mentioned when I talked to you last week, I was involved in one of these lawsuits. I defended Ron Johnson and a couple congressmen up in Wisconsin from a challenge that, by the way, looked a heck of a lot like this complaint.
Go figure.
I think I know where the source material came from. And, up there, the district court, held, I think correctly, that looked like, courts aren't essentially like roving monitors of, hey, did you comply with the Constitution? There has to be a private right of action to enforce it. And the 14th Amendment doesn't say, Congress or the states can pass legislation to enforce this. It says Congress may pass appropriate legislation to enforce this. And Congress hasn't done that.
Where does that leave us then? I mean, let's say this thing plays out and either Trump or Griswold or both file their, hey, this needs to be dismissed. There's no standing, court agrees. Who then has the authority to enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment?
The United States Congress.
Period. That's it.
Pass a law.
Just Congress.
Well, I mean, the United States Congress could pass a law creating a private right of action, right, to do exactly this. Like, Congress could pass a law that says, hey, we're now granting all state and federal courts in the country jurisdiction to hear claims from private citizens claiming that somebody is disqualified under this amendment. They could pass that law. And if they did, the plaintiffs here would have standing to do this, but they haven't.
Now, they've made the argument in this pleading here that this thing is like self-executing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't require any other additional thing. How do they make that argument, and why do you think it's flawed?
Well, and then how do they make the argument? I think maybe you should go with why do they make the argument, right? I mean, why do they make the argument? Because they have to, right?
Well, yeah, they know Congress isn't going to do this. They know that.
Well, I mean, but George, let's not forget, I think I mentioned this last week, Congress actually considered legislation in the last Congress, when it was democratically controlled, right, to create a private right of action for this. They declined to pass that legislation.
Interesting.
So the last Congress absolutely could have done it. In fact, they thought real hard about it, and they decided not to. Yeah. So how do they make the argument? They simply say, look, like, the disqualification clause says you're disqualified. You shall not hold any other office if you've done any of these things, right? And they just ignore Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which says Congress has to pass legislation.
That's right. That's right. In fact, here's the language. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article.
Yep.
pretty clear. You know what I'm fascinated by with this is that we don't even then get into the substantive stuff. And I have spent a great deal of time trying to research some of the arguments here and trying to figure out where they're going. I got myself into a position where I looked at the cases that they cited, whether it was Hassan versus Colorado, which of course is a Gorsuch case. They love that for where this case will end up. Elliott versus Cruz on all these others. And the distinction that I drew in my mind, I hadn't even been thinking standing, by the way. The distinction I drew in my mind was, well, those are all status qualifications, right? Like those are factual. Right. You either are or you are not a naturalized citizen. Right. This one doesn't feel like a status crime at all. And they use the language to distinguish between that. And it's the difference between someone who is unqualified and someone who is disqualified. Those are two very different words. Right. And again, that's the argument they have to make because they're trying to say, look, Colorado law, right? Colorado is free to decide for itself if somebody is qualified for the ballot or not. Okay. And because Colorado has a duty and Colorado courts are competent to interpret the 14th Amendment, right? Colorado courts can decide, look, whether or not Congress has passed the law, this guy's an insurrectionist. Therefore, he can't be on the ballot, period. That's what they're asking the Denver District Court to do. But again, I'm just saying at the end of the day, I don't think you can get around Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. And so I think that, and by the way, I'm sure that the very smart lawyers who have brought this case know they've got a problem with that, right? But at the end of the day, Congress has not passed legislation to do this. And the 14th Amendment could have said something like, this shall be self-executing. It could have been silent on whether it's self-executing or not, right? It could have said the state legislatures and the Congress may pass appropriate legislation. It didn't. It held the power to enforce it to Congress, and Congress has before in its history passed laws enforcing the disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment. The problem is they've all been repealed. So none of them are on the books right now. We're talking with Chris Murray, super lawyer and constitutional wizard. Where does this thing go from here? And I guess what I'm really asking is, what's the timeline look like? Like, you and I can look at the calendar and say, hey, we're 15 months away from an election. But in political terms, that's like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? That's like tomorrow. Yep. So this is, that's maybe, I think, one of the more interesting things about this. This is going to be on the rocket docket. So now that this has been filed, there's another statute referenced in here, 11-113, and that's sort of a catch-all, hey, an elections official is about to do something wrong or failed to do something statute. And that requires that once a verified petition has been filed, the district court has to hear the case, has to hold a hearing within 5 days, or it has to be responded to within 5 days. Then the district court has to have a hearing forthwith. And the names on ballots provision of statute says the district court has to issue findings of fact and conclusions of law within 48 hours. And under 11113, any appeal is discretionary and it goes straight to the state Supreme Court. Interesting. And then from there, regardless of how the state Supreme Court rules, do you expect this to then be appealed up into the federal level? And where does it go? It would. So if it's a final judgment of the state Supreme Court or the state's highest court, it goes to the Supreme Court of the United States. If you had to look at a calendar and guess, outside of some agreed upon delay, even if they can agree upon a delay, when does this get resolved? And that's presuming, by the way, it doesn't get kicked out on a standing issue, or maybe even standing gets litigated. I don't know, but it doesn't get kicked for lack of ripeness, all that other stuff. Like, when do we get a final national answer to this? Well, I think you're going to get a ruling from the Denver District Court next week, or at the latest the week after. And I think because of the speed, this is a tough thing for a judge, right? Because this has to move so fast. If you're a judge and you get one of these, forget the uniqueness of this. If you get an election challenge, an elections case, right?
they all move really quick. And so you have to put aside everything else you're working on and turn to this. Because of how fast the court will have to move, I think the court will probably consider standing and the facts all at the same time.
Wow.
Right. And just issue one ruling. So you'll see that next week or the week after, unless, yes, somehow there's some kind of a contrivance to slow this down. I don't really know how you can do that consistent with the statute.
Would a court then rule, as you pointed out, would the court then rule on, if it says, hey, you don't have standing, does it end there? Or does it say, I'm going to go ahead and address the other merits just in case an appellate court thinks I'm wrong?
No, I think if the court rules on standing, it will probably, again, because of the compressed timeline, say, look, interesting facts here, guys, but you don't have standing to bring the claim. So I don't have to do any more with this.
These guys, I imagine, think that winning the lottery would be finding someone who could keep this guy off the ballot and then at the same time winning through the appellate levels. But that's kind of the pie in the sky view of this. What's the other goal of this if you're guessing? I know that's the stated goal. That's what's in the pleading. But is there some other ulterior motive or benefit that doesn't seem obvious from this kind of litigation?
I mean, I would say there's the benefit of, I think the folks who bring this are wrong about this benefit. Okay. But I think that they genuinely think that this somehow hurts Donald Trump politically. I think it probably works to his benefit, especially in the Republican primary. But I think that they think this is sort of the drumbeat that, hey, this guy's really bad. He's totally unacceptable. Right. Remember, America, if this guy becomes the nominee, right, you can't vote for him. You just can't.
I'm interested in seeing how Jenna and Phil deal with this. And again, I am a tepid at best supporter of Trump as our potential nominee. And of course, I don't know what decisions I have to make if it's Trump Biden again. It seems obvious and painful to me. But if the state were somehow to inject itself into this through the courts or otherwise to keep this guy off the ballot or try to, it would motivate me to become far more pro-Trump, not as the person, but the campaign itself, only because I would be so pissed off that this was a mechanism used to deprive voters of the opportunity to vote their will in Colorado or anywhere else. I'd become a lot more exercised over this.
I mean, I think that's true of a lot of folks. I mean, I'll say, that to me, it's, elections ought to decide who nominees are, right?
That's right.
Not court proceedings. Sorry.
That's right. If this guy's going to lose, beat him at the ballot. But to keep him off the ballot, by the way, I can't think of anything worse for the nation than to feed that theory out there, that conspiratorial theory that the entire system is set up to rob a significant portion of America of the person they want to choose to be president. This would be gasoline on that fire. I mean, this would be nuts. I don't know how you recover from this.
I mean, I agree. And, again, like I don't think, because, I know some of the folks and the lawyers involved with this, right? And obviously, politically, I disagree with a lot of them on a lot of things, but this is like more emblematic of one of the bigger problems we've got, George, in the country, is that like sometimes we just are like, it's like we're living in two different realities. I think that the folks who are bringing this genuinely think that they're doing the right and just thing, right? And that what they're doing is helpful and salubrious for the body politic. I just think they couldn't be more mistaken about that. Right, and that if you want a final verdict, right, on Donald Trump, look, the guy has to be permitted to run for office,
right,
and he has to be permitted to win or lose at the ballot box. Period.
I agree with you, Chris Murray. We're going to continue to invite you on as this thing develops, so you can give us the smart approach on this. I appreciate you're a smart guy, if only to focus first on, can you bring this suit? I was already jumping into the merits of it. And you're like, hang on, they can't bring it. I'm like, oh my God, that's huge. That's a big, big fact. Thank you for sharing that with us out here. And man, as long as your schedule permits and your judgment is poor, we'll continue to have you on.
That sounds good, George. Great talking to you.
Thanks. Good talking to you too, buddy. That was Chris Murray, super lawyer and constitutional wizard. Listen, we went along with Chris because this thing is so new, so novel, and clearly he's smarter than I am. I've been saying that for years, and it's just been borne out here again. This is fascinating. I guess my question for you out there at 710 KNUS and our number 303-696-1971, if somehow this were to be successful and they were to keep Trump off of the ballot here in the state of Colorado and Wisconsin and North Carolina and other states replicate this kind of nonsense, what's the result? What happens here? Is this good for the Republican Party? Is this good for America? And do you agree with this effort? George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Chris Murray, super lawyer and constitutional wizard, for talking us through this latest, what sounds like it's going to be a failing attempt to keep Donald Trump from voters, which I just want to tell you, I can't think of anything worse for the concept of democracy or especially in this day and age, this particular election cycle. This guy is clearly the front runner based on all the polling that we've seen. He should have the opportunity to show up on the ballot and for Republicans to decide whether or not he should be our standard bearer. And if he wins the nomination, then Americans should get to decide whether or not he could be the president. Good or bad is not part of it. The answer here is this guy, like everybody else who is so qualified, should be allowed to be on the ballot. Now, some folks in here have been texting. Good morning from Nebraska. Having coffee with a woman, 86 years old, says this sounds like Nazi Germany. I don't know if that's Nazi Germany stuff to try to keep someone off the ballot, but I do think that there is something afoot here that we've just never seen before. And either we don't trust the voters or we don't trust the system or something to try to keep them off the ballot. Here's one. It would be good. A rift in states where Trump can or cannot run would force the Republican Party in those states to deal with the fact that Trump is a dagger in their side, and the National Party would have to adjust accordingly. One, I don't think they'd have to adjust accordingly. And I don't think the decisions, let's be clear about what's going on here. The way Chris described some of the folks involved here, and I didn't know this about them. You have the attorney for the Democrat Party pushing this lawsuit, along with Phil Weiser's handpicked Solicitor General from just the recent past. In fact, so recent, he's the guy that argued the failing argument before the Supreme Court on 303 Creative. Those are the two, I think, leading attorneys on this particular case. Now, they may have found some disaffected Republicans, maybe even some Republicans to throw their name on it, but this is clearly an effort driven by the Dems as much as anyone else. And the idea that Dems can file a lawsuit against another Dem, which will be defended by a Dem and be argued in front of judges appointed by Dems, that to me doesn't spell a normal formula for success for the law or Constitution. And so if that were to happen here in Colorado, I don't think it does anything to the Republican Party here. I don't think it, except give it methamphetamine and steroids in one big shot. I'm telling you, if this were to happen, I would become newly invigorated to push forward for not just Republicans, but for Donald Trump. Not because I believe in anything differently than I did before about this guy, but if the system is going to try to keep me or anyone else from being able to cast a ballot for this guy based off of this weak-ass garbage argument off of the Constitution, then I'm going to become newly invested in this process. This is just an untenable future that we have if private sector people, just private citizens, can pop up and announce, I don't think this guy should be on the ballot. Some have been citing some of the cases that I mentioned to you where, well, you know, Gorsuch in this case and so in that case. Those were all status cases. Those were all cases about whether or not somebody was a naturalized citizen versus a natural born citizen. The citizenship thing is merely a fact. It's not a matter of interpretation. It is a fact. It is a status, like being 35. That is a status qualification. This is very different than that. This is a disqualification. It's not a requirement that you have never participated in this to be qualified. It's that it's a disqualification if you have. Does that make sense? So this is where we're at, is even by their own words, these folks in this 100+ page, 115 page pleading have acknowledged that this is about disqualification. That makes it very different. Well, who decides? We're going to allow just Jenna Griswold to decide? Or maybe is it just a single judge? A judge are they going to hold a trial on whether or not this meets the definition of insurrection or rebellion? Or maybe they're going to have a trial also that includes what the definition of engage in is. Maybe all those things have to happen. But Chris Murray's point, it was a smart one, is none of the people on this particular pleading, none of these petitioners, these plaintiffs, none of them are Congress. And that's Section 5, which is just 2 after Section 3 of Article 14, makes it clear that Congress has the authority to legislate and enforce on this particular section. So This feels like it's a big loser to me. But should it happen? Some people texting in here. What about the guy in New Mexico that the judge said could never run for office because of the 14th and his actions on the 6th? That stood. Well, I don't know the stat. I'll have to look that up, Texter. I've heard about that one. I don't know what the status of it is. I don't know if it's appealed. I don't know what he's accused of or he's been convicted of. I don't know anything about that. Democrats are doing this to make sure Trump is the nominee because he's the easiest to defeat, especially if their candidate is not Biden. Well, I think their candidate so far is going to be Biden. Dems the brakes. LOL is good there. Let's be clear. 0% chance he gets any electoral votes in any state where this is effective. That hurts national win probability. Well, it's a great point for Colorado, right? Because it's not like keeping him off the ballot here is going to make any difference in the general, but it could have an impact in the primary. It could play a role in the primary. And so the electoral votes thing isn't going to be an issue if he's not able to make it as the nominee. Let's go to the phone lines, 303-696-1971. Dwayne from Divide, you're on 710. Sir, what do you think?
Good morning, sir. A couple of questions that I have on this situation. Are the Democrats, as you just alluded to, do they want him on the ballot, which is why they're calling such a ruckus?
It's such an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know the answer. You know, I think Billy's point is the polling that's out there suggests that he is the easiest to defeat by the Dems. But I'll say that even the most recent polling that I've seen has him either tied with, ahead of, or within the margin of error of Biden, which, by the way, has to freak out the Biden people, right? They're like, oh my God, we've done everything to this guy, right? Like, he's been indicted at the state and federal level 4 times. He's being sued. I mean, all these things are happening. And yet he's as popular as our guy, as Biden. I mean, that's got to scare the hell out of them.
Well, it's 43-43. It's the independents in the middle that do the elections. But even still, I mean, you know, he makes the Terminator look like a kid. They hit him, he bounces back, and he bounces
like
back
a Weeble
harder.
wobble. Yeah.
Well, yeah, a Weeble wobble on steroids. I guess the biggest thing is they're trying to nickel and dime him. If they do this in 50 states, and you figure what, $2 million in legal fees to do that, that's going to cripple him eventually.
I don't know. He seems to get money from everywhere every time something happens. And Billy is right to point out, dude's a billionaire. I mean, he's got plenty of money to respond to these things. Does this change at all if they were to do this, Dwayne? Does this change at all your opinion, not of Trump, but of maybe what you would do in this election?
Well, I kind of agree with Huckabee on how he said, was it hyperbole that he said, bullets versus ballots? Yes, but why couldn't we file against Biden for the 25th Amendment, that he's incapable of performing the job, and file something to that nature that would take him off the ballot?
It's interesting. I think that too requires action. I think it's pretty specific in the 25th. I think it requires that incapacity. Is that the right one? I'm going to look it up. I think it requires a vote of, it's either Congress and or the department heads, the cabinet heads that have been confirmed by the Senate. I'm going to look it up while we're talking. I just don't think there's a private right of action. And that's where Chris's thing is so smart, is that he's like, look, none of these people are Congress. So peace out. It's over.
That could be.
Here's what it says. The Section 4 of Amendment 25, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tem of the Senate and the speaker their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like you and I don't have that same private right of action. In many ways, this limits who can do the 25th, just like the 14th limits who can do the 14th.
Well, there is something to that. One other question. Again, I didn't even attempt my LSATs and my many strives in life. Okay. Well, if Biden is removed, be it stroke, aliens, whatever, and Kamala takes over, doesn't the Speaker of the House become vice president? My constitutional, I can't seem to remember.
Yeah. Well, you're going back now to the Watergate era. Spiro Agnew Bales, remember, and Gerald Ford then becomes elevated to vice president and then becomes president when Richard Nixon pops smoke. I don't think any of that's going to happen. I think that's a scary feature for them too. But my God, we don't wish Kevin McCarthy to be elevated from speaker to vice president, because that means the president of the United States is swallow hard Kamala Harris. I mean, we can't. Come on, man. You're starting to make me giggle now. That's just scary funny.
Well, no. Well, what I'm getting to is that everybody keeps saying, oh, if Biden's gone, it's Kamala. Well, if we have our man in there as the vice president, or our R versus their D, then it should be a very simple reason to sit there and say we're elevated to this. If we go into the elections, we can kind of show our situation as where we are. But it's always that second question or second statement never gets made, is that the Speaker of the, because when Pelosi was in, they were trying to get rid of Trump so darn hard that she would be stepped up, and then they'd get rid of Pence and she'd become president, which would of course cause Hillary to sit there.
I
and
know
have a
people
massive
speculated
stroke and
about
explode.
that, Dwayne. I just can't imagine that ever being a real thing. I think these people have been playing a long game for a while now. Listening to what's his name, senator out of I want to say Virginia, Tim Kaine, former VP candidate himself. It feels like a lot of the things that they did back during the impeachments and after January the 6th had that secondary but intended effect of setting the table for something like this, to allow someone to say, hey, even the Congress has made rulings and findings that this was an insurrection and all this other stuff, in order to sort of prime the pump for this future litigation. They're long game thinkers in this, and I don't think that their long game is really truly about what's best for America. It's what's best for the Democrat Party. And it's not that the Republicans don't do anything different, but it's just Billy says, here's how it works, man. If the vice presidency is vacant, the president nominates a successor, and then confirmed by the Senate. Billy, is both houses end up confirming whoever that person is. So it's unlikely to be Ted Cruz. Dwayne, I'd love to keep this going, but I'm also getting the finger from Billy, and not in the good way. Listen, before I cut away for a break, can I tell you about Mitch Floria with the Art of Granite? Rock solid. Nope, not just the cabinets he installs in your kitchen and your bathroom and anywhere else you'd want them. Like, even if you're finishing the basement, I have not thrown this out before, but you're finishing your basement and maybe you're thinking it's time for a wet bar. And I've been in cool basements like this. Call Mitch Floria. This dude is a rock solid patriot, businessman, and craftsman. This guy will put beauty in your home for a wholesale price, and because you say I'm a George listener, a 710 listener, we'll throw in the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you're only doing the one room, he'll throw in the sink for free. My guess is you could probably talk him into doing something with that basement that you're trying to finish as well. This guy does everything the old school way, eye to eye, hand in hand, making you promises that he backs up. His reputation speaks volumes about the kind of business that he's had since he came over from communist-controlled Romania many years ago and became a citizen. Give him a call at 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919, or you can check him out at theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Stick around. When we come back, George Brauchler, 710, KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS inbox filled, not just with your texts about our last topic, and we'll shift gears here at the top of the 8, but also home stuff going on like crazy. I read a couple reports, you may have too, that there are signs that the market is starting to cool, but it's still progressing forward at a pretty good pace. It's time for you to do that thing you've been holding off doing, and that's getting serious about whether or not to sell your home and buy another one. It might not be the right time, but don't make that decision on your own. Reach out to Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. These folks are experts. No pressure here. They sell so many homes every year. One more isn't going to be the difference maker in their bottom line, so they put no pressure on you. That's what makes them special, I think, is not just what they know, but how they treat you. They're interested in doing the best. Give them a call at 833-301-SOLD. 833-301-SOLD. That's gayhasthebuyers.com. GAYE hasthebuyers.com. When we come back, Jimmy Graham, Able Shepard, Drag Show. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here halfway through the Thursday show on 710 KNUS, shifting gears from our discussion. And this is an ongoing one, this attempt by some to strip away our ability to vote for or against Donald Trump in our primary and ultimately on our general election ballot here in the state of Colorado. It sounds like talking to Chris Murray that's going to be a failed effort. I like that a lot, but I'm interested to see where this thing goes. We'll keep you up to date on it. Also, I'm going to let you know, because I just got this text, Randy Corcoran, you may know Randy. He's a 710 guy. He's the Republican National Committee guy. He will be filling in for Stefan Tubes today. Now, I wondered where Stefan was, and then I saw a Facebook post of a picture of a sunset over an ocean. And my instant thought was, screw you, Stefan, wherever you are, screw you. But I'm kidding. I think he must be wrapping up a vacation. But Randy Corcoran on tonight. Now, listen, there's been stuff in the news. You may have heard about it. It's got some legs to it for a couple different reasons, but I wanted to go right to the source to have a conversation. You'll recall that there was a Pride Fest event out there. I think it was at the Douglas County Fairgrounds. And then there were a number of folks, I think all men, we'll find out in a moment, who stood up, I think in protest or objection to a drag show event that was taking place at Pride Fest. Somehow in the center of this storm is our next guest. He has been a feature and a fixture in Douglas County public safety for a long, long time. Mr. Jimmy Graham, sir, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, George. Appreciate you.
Man, I can't imagine that 10 or 20 days ago you thought this was going to be the dominant theme of what you would be talking about to the media and Able Shepard and all that other stuff.
Yeah, this was kind of by surprise. It shouldn't have surprised me just because of the way things are being twisted politically, where one man takes a stand, some other men join him, and now all of a sudden everything is turned upside down, and somehow a guy like myself is the bad guy.
Well, let's back up for a moment because I know who you are. Obviously, I think a ton of people do. But for those folks that are listening either to the show live or on the podcast, tell us your background, Jimmy. How did you get to forming Able Shepard? And then we'll get into all the things that took place through the Pride Fest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I know each other from sharing the stage on talking about how to protect our communities, children in particular. So I appreciate you. I have for a long time. I was veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, so a little over 15 years serving honorably, which that's being attacked as well. Was it honorable? Was he discharged under whatever? Absolutely not. Decided to, start a family, and my path, it took me in a different direction. Was recruited by the CIA to be a bodyguard. Was in places like Benghazi, Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Serbia, all these other places all over the world, protecting people, teaching them how to take care of one another, which led to Able Shepard. We started the Active Shooter Response Training Center with Centennial Centennial Gun Club many years ago. That didn't quite take. I believe it was before its time. That led to Able Shepard. So Able Shepard, again, our motto is take care of one another, and we train police, security guards, individuals, all of that for readiness, both armed and unarmed. That armed piece, boy, the other side has really run with that and made a lot of claims about Jimmy conducting an armed training to confront a drag show, which is absolutely not true. The training they're referring to was me asking men to be self-controlled and simply stand.
The Able Shepard website, accessible to anybody who wants to know, tons of information on there, including the programs that you offer, class schedules, but also the who we are portion. And underneath the bottom of that is something called the solution. And the only bolded words in that whole thing are exactly what you said: take care of one another. And then ultimately, we are all responsible for our own safety, for our family, and for our community. You can be the fastest and most capable first responder in your immediate vicinity. But to be uniform, safe, and accurate, you need the right training. And that, I think, is the basis and the jumping off point for all the programs that you offer. Now, since then, you have also been, and you're right, we were on the same stage talking about active shooter, mass shooter stuff, schools, and all that other stuff. You've also become involved in a lot of the public safety discussions that took place before, but certainly after STEM at the county commissioner level, with the sheriff's office, and all of those other things. That part I completely understand. What happened? Tell folks, how did you, and I know that since this thing happened, the suggestion was, hey, this was an Able Shepard led event. And you've come back and said, no, it wasn't. It was me and a bunch of other dudes who may be affiliated with Able Shepard, but this wasn't about Able Shepard. Talk us through what led up to Pride Fest and you and an Able Shepard and all that helping pull this thing together.
Yeah, they're grasping at straws. Anything that you do, you yourself as a man, now all of a sudden they're going to try to tie KNUS, they're going to try to tie your business, they're going to try all that together. So that's what they're trying to do, and saying that I can't do anything on my own. If I use my email address, if I, put out any kind of documentation through a paid service, all of this stuff is under attack right now. But I felt led, obviously due to my faith, I'm a Christian man, proudly a Christian man that served this nation, a veteran, all of this. I've been called at this event, was called a coward. I was called ISIS. I was called terrorist. All of this nastiness for simply standing, having a shirt that said "Stand to Protect Children." I wanted some kind of message that just says, at some point we have to stand. The numbers are horrible when we talk about teen suicides. We talk about all these other things. Yet there's a push for unhealthy. This unhealthy thing in our children. I don't know that our children are going to have a future like our past. Like when we came up, man, it just felt like comparatively it was safe. There was honor, integrity, accountability. Those words meant something. And I think it's going to happen now. You know, it's like it's unfortunate we'll be clawing for every inch. On the back, I wanted a true message. So I put, Jesus loves you, and so do I. And the way that I shepherd, this is not as my business, but as me as a man, is I'm going and you're invited. I lead adventures through the mountains for young people, for older people, for men and women, for all of that. And I say, I'm going to go do this thing and you're invited. And then they come, you know, so they come and do this thing. We all come back healthier. So I said, I'm going to go as Jimmy Graham. I am going to go and simply stand in the audience, pull off a cover shirt and have this shirt just as a message, and put that message towards the people on the stage saying, Jesus loves you and so do I. And just let them know I'm standing to protect children. And then it grew and more people wanted to come, and it ended up between 70 and 100. I didn't
Oh
count.
my gosh.
People said that, and they lost their minds. I'm talking vulgarity. I'm talking about threats. I'm talking about physical assault. That's all. I just met with the sheriff's department yesterday for everything. There's an investigation going on. Gave them the video that we have and all that. And we were just absolutely assaulted.
Let's back up just a little bit. First off, 70 to 100 is a huge turnout. All dudes?
Yeah, and it's funny because the Parasol Patrol, I hate even saying and giving them any, and I'm praying for those guys. What I saw through one of their things, I've just recently learned, I've never heard of them, is that they found community and they're nice to each other and all that stuff, but they just will put an umbrella in your face. Parasol is a strange word, but an umbrella in your face and block your message. So this, they get assigned. As soon as I walked onto the property, literally on the radios, I've done obviously a lot of bodyguard work, open radios, bad guy coming in.
Oh my God.
Guys front. And I just looked and said, you guys might want to turn your radios down, you know, but they have been in our face and putting up these umbrellas, and they just asked the same question. All dudes are like, why was it all men? And my response would be, thank you for affirming that there's two genders. So all of a sudden it's men and women again. Like, why didn't you let women come? Women were very much a part of it. They chose to be out in the parking lot praying. There were women there standing, but they didn't acknowledge them. All of a sudden there's men and women again. And now we're misogynists or whatever because they were only men. I'm like, well, thank you affirming that there are men in the world.
The drag show stuff and that T part of the LGBTQ plus community in the Pride Fest, they seem to be proliferating. This has been going on for a bit in different places. What was it that you learned about this one in advance of it happening where you thought this is the one where, as you described, you felt called to take some sort of action?
So this is very near to my house and a school and a church, and it's right in the heart of Douglas County. This one, they were absolutely encouraging that there be alcohol, that there be these sexual performances in front of children. They were encouraging children to tip the dancers, and they were having a closed off area where there were only children with no adults. You weren't allowed in there. It's just dark. And I simply disagree. And I've told people, people are trying to say he hates gays. It's just simply not. I don't hate anybody. I love everybody in this country, proudly served it. My buddies fought and died so they could do things like that, have the right to do it. But I'll never support it. You'll never hear me say that it's okay to be X, because I simply disagree. And local laws, the Constitution, all that say that I get to say that. I get to have an opinion and say I simply disagree. I don't see this as healthy, and I disagree. So to have children being groomed and tipping, if this was men and women, if this was bringing children into one of those places, a strip club, and a child was tipping a woman, it would be wrong. But somehow, because it's not a woman, it's okay. And that it's just it's unfortunate. Someone must stand and say this.
Jimmy, did you see that happen? Did you see some kids going up there and passing bucks or whatever I don't know what they give, but.
So our lawyer wrote a letter to the sheriff and said that you're about to step into this, because when they were encouraging that, he wrote this letter. I read the letter. He wrote it out there saying you're about to open yourself up for lawsuits, right? So they did get involved, and they did say, hey, you need to cut this part of it out. And then when we got there, some people attempted to enter the child-only area. They were restricted. We called over the attorney. We called over a congressman. We called over, a commissioner. And then they were allowed in with an escort. from these parasol patrol people, but they were infuriated. They were furious that that thing was violated by members of the public. It's again, this is unhealthy. It's not okay. And then, to call me a coward, and just like you, I know you're modest and you don't boast your military background, nor are you ashamed of it. But I have a medal that says hero on it, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm called a coward and a terrorist and ISIS. At some point, this is bizarro world. This is insane. And no, what I learned on this one was that these people are unorganized. They're not that big, and they're wounded. And I'm praying for them, because hurting people hurt people, and they want to hurt your children. They want to groom them into being like them, which is not healthy.
How many?
So I'll say that out.
How many folks were there for? And I can't picture it because I've never been. But was it a specific performance that you knew was coming, or that they had advertised, or that you saw that you thought, okay, this is where we make our point. This is where we express our opposition to this. Or did it just sort of develop organically? And how many people supporting that drag show, if that's what it was, how many people were there for them?
Not many. I would say equal. Like, I would guess equal numbers, like 70 to 100 on, I'll call it, their side. But again, we weren't there to didn't go there to say, hey, you can't have pride. Not at all. I went there to just boldly stand and say that there are still men that walk this earth that say you should stand to protect children, and hopefully inspire a nation and show them how to do it. And by meaning, one of the commissioners, I won't say her name, but a commissioner said that there was armed training in a ranch in Douglas County. There was armed training. So the people running the booths thought there were 300 armed men going to walk through and push through this event, which caused a knee-jerk reaction for their side, their chief of security for the Pride thing, a member of that community, calling for armed resistance.
Wait, what? Hold on, just so that I'm clear. An elected official had suggested out there that, I presume it's you, maybe not by name, but you were going to be part of some group that was going to come in armed and sort of try to take over the Pride Fest. And so therefore the Pride Fest people were like, well, we need to be armed and have a response.
Correct.
Good
very, very
Lord.
And not even, yes, by name, Able Shepard. Able Shepard was leading an armed training in Douglas County to basically go assault this venue. Absolutely not true. And truth be told, the Thursday prior, there was a training by Jimmy Graham who put out three specific objectives. 1, stand to protect children. 2, Jesus loves you and so do I. And 3, let's go model strength through self-control. So my plea to them was, let's go stand as men. This is what Jimmy's going to do. I'm going to go stand as a man lawfully. I'd already talked to the chief of police. I'd already talked to the sheriff. Can I do this? Yeah, it's open to the public. It says you belong here. They want equality for everybody. So I was asking them, even saying that I carry all the time. Right? I'm a Second Amendment guy in Douglas County, but said I don't feel this is appropriate. So I am going to lead by example. I don't feel the need to be armed to make this point. It's actually contradictory. And I would encourage you to do the same. And many people chose to not be legally armed to go make this point. So I believe this is the way you should do it, peacefully with self-control.
Jimmy, for those who continue to try to tie this effort to Able Shepard, that they're asking things like, well, if the email came from you, what else came from Able Shepard, if not just your email? Who paid for the t-shirts? Who set up the meetings? All that other stuff. What do you say to that?
I designed the t-shirts. I paid for the t-shirts, and I was reimbursed by the individual. So that I'm going to wear the shirt. I even asked, when I was talking to law enforcement, I'm going to wear this shirt that says something, and they're like, you go whatever you want. They're wearing a rainbow. You're wearing a whatever. You have a right to stand. You have a right to speak. You have a right to dress how you would like to dress. Right now, the intent was not to disturb the thing and go up and block and all that. And this is a strange turn of events.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
We got there, and we were going to just stand there, and we were going to pull off our cover shirts and just simply stand. The organizer thought he was being cute, and he invited us up because they had a mole. They had a spy. This is very dramatic for them. They're like, we have whatever. They have a mole, and there's even people here, and I have this all recorded.
Mm-hmm.
There's people with secret shirts. Do you want to come up and do that now? Would you like to come up front and do that? We were invited up to the front. I said, sure. So I came up, I removed the cover shirt, so did everybody else. Some came to the front, some stayed in the audience. And we were invited up, which we didn't expect. So now it's even more so. We were, went over and talked to the police. They were, asked to leave. We went to clarify, hey, what does the law say about this?
Yeah.
Their chief of security have this on the tape as well. I've videoed all of this. They invited us to stay. We got one guy, yeah. So they didn't communicate amongst themselves. So we got a guy from the stage losing his mind, which was comical. And his head chief of security in charge of coordination invited us to stay. So we stayed another 30 minutes. We planned on making our point and leaving peacefully, but then we're invited to stay. And then we just watched them kind of deteriorate.
We're talking with Jimmy Graham from Able Shepard. Before that thing happened, where the guy thought, hey, I'm going to spring this on you, and haha, we know you're out there. What was the plan going to be but for that?
I was going to stand and expose that shirt. And then, I'd get some kind of reaction and then leave. And then we were invited to stay. So we stayed a little longer. And then, as Paos Clark, it's comical if it wasn't so destructive, questioning, should a Christian bear false witness, when that is absolutely his daily job, is bearing false witness. However, he's trying to twist the words and say that I coordinated this, or, that Able Shepard led the thing. And there's a thin line when you're a small business. What is Able Shepard? What is Jimmy Graham? The way that we define that is my people, when they call them my people, my employees. If I pay them to be there, it is an Able Shepard event, right? If I go as Jimmy Graham to a barbecue or to some kind of thing, or politically even something, and they support it and join, they're not getting paid. They're not on the clock, but they are invited too. I don't exclude them because they work for me. They're like, your staff was there. They posted a picture of a guy that said he was there, he's on staff, because they scoured my website. The guy wasn't even there. It was just another bald dude. So they're just like, go grab whoever. It doesn't matter. They accused a young man that was there of spray painting their thing because it said it looks like him. And the person was wearing a mask and they believe it to be a woman. The truth has left the building. You can't make sense of nonsense. And they are just looking at destroying Able Shepard and Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy, for those that have asked the question here, what is it that he was protecting the kids from? What do you tell them?
I say I don't just love my kids. I love all kids. This is a very unhealthy thing to be grooming children to, the whole tipping for sexual performance. The suicide rates are through the roof. We deal with active shooter. A lot of people, schools have a list as long as your arm as far as who the next shooter is going to be. They're very unhealthy. And if you're creating unhealthy, then that's not good, right? Healthy has got us to a very good place. Even the Judeo-Christian ethics that I believe are under attack right now. Death to Christo-fascists has been put on. Actually, I sent you that. There's a photo that was sent with just a disgusting thumbnail of a very, like an obese. It's supposed to be Trump. It's a heavy set white guy on a cross with a MAGA hat on.
Yeah.
So crucified on a cross with the hashtag death to Christo-fascists. So very, very much under attack right now for everything that I am that used to be. Just not boasting, but just that used to be the definition of an individual.
The part I definitely see as a problem is whether it's straight, gay, or otherwise, this idea of inviting kids not to observe whatever it is. I've never been to a drag show, so I only know the still photos and see these people provocatively dressed. But the idea of sending kids up to, tip or tuck dollar bills here, there, everywhere, I would find that to be incredibly harmful and offensive in terms of encouraging that behavior. Short of that is part of the concern with the grooming, that these kids are being exposed to a normalization of this lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that a man standing there saying nothing, like a man standing there with a shirt that says "Stand to Protect Children. Jesus loves you, so do I." When people are literally, this reminds me of like warfare, using children in front of them, shaking them and saying, "Are you scared? Look, they're so scary." And they're scaring their children. Now the kids are crying and they're blaming it on the guy who's standing. They're just standing there being silent, doing nothing. Somebody was in a wheelchair. I know this young lady, she used to go to the same church, and I don't know what happened, whatever. She's driving through, hitting people, laughing, saying there's a child here. So there's a child on the front of a mechanical cart that are very heavy. There's car batteries in there and all that stuff. She's got a child posted on the front and running into people like several times. And they're saying, there's a handicapped person, let them through. It's being weaponized, right? So this is, I disagree that would be a definition of healthy.
And I get that part too. We get folks that text in here, man, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, that run the gamut across this. And for some, the questions are being asked like, well, listen, are you going to stand up between these kids and, provocatively dressed and dancing cheerleaders at a Broncos game? Or is this different? And if so, how?
Yeah. The difference is there's an unnatural and very, I think it's an ugly thing going on. Like when you've got a man like it's fun, it's beautiful in my son's eyes when he looks up and he's like, what the, like his eyes say it, like what's happening right now? It's like, you've got a man that has obviously shaved his whole body, dressed like a woman and dancing with parts hanging out, like whether it be buttocks or a fake, whatever, and he didn't see that, but when he'll see a video of just a walk by and just see that I'm looking at something, he looks over, he'll just turn my phone off.
That was up at the Pride Fest thing?
No, this was at the Pride. I was watching a snippet.
I get it. I get it. I was gonna say, because Stefan's presence there does not make it a 7-10 event. No, I'm kidding. That's not Stefan. He would.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like I last place I want to be, right? But I went there for a purpose because people from the community were saying somebody must do something, and I've got this protector gene that just says, okay, I guess we're getting involved with this, right? And the more I looked into it, because most people don't even know it's happening. So that specifically that drag portion of it, a man in this country, at least for now, can show up and just say, I disagree, and do it respectfully. And there were people that were there. There was a group, I'm not going to say their name. They were screaming from bullhorns, and there was obscenities, and there was all of this stuff going on. I believe that's the wrong way to do it, right? Even though there was an area for them. Yeah, but if you are gonna state your opinion, I believe that's the right way to do it. And if we were asked to leave by the police, if they say you are going to jail if you don't leave and you're breaking the law, then we would have left. But we would up again. Very disorganized.
Jimmy, these kids, I presume, were not there on a field trip. My God, I hope it wasn't the school that brought them there. My presumption is they were brought there by family members. Did those family members express objection, concern, or anything else to what you were doing? And I ask that in the context of, even though I wouldn't do that with my kids, they make this choice to do that. And then they're like, who are these dudes standing up trying to get between my parenting decision and whatever it is they're trying to watch on the stage? What do you say to that?
Again, don't just love my kids, love all kids. The big ones should protect the little ones, meaning that there are already laws. I'm not trying to create new laws. I'm just saying that the laws apply to everybody.
Yeah.
You can't, I get to raise my children how I wish, to an extent. I don't get to harm them. I don't get to take my son in the bar, sit him next to me, and then tip women. It's against the law. I just can't do it. But somehow it's okay for the other side. So
someone had told me that a few years ago.
It's not going to work, right? This is not going to work if all of a sudden the laws apply to me and don't you. By the way, the cops did a great job, but there's this weird, I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Sure.
Right? Somebody must
I get it.
stand. Like everybody's like, oh, this is messy, I don't want to do it. No, you must do your job. Like there were people assaulted and no one was arrested. Police were everywhere. Why does it have to be a police report? If you are an officer and you see someone break the law, they need to go to
jail. Well, so it's such an interesting point, Jimmy. But let me ask then, it sounds like what you're saying, because in the context of bringing kids into bars, I sure wish someone had told me that years ago. I wouldn't have done that. I'm kidding. But are you suggesting that these parents who have brought these kids to this thing are putting these kids at risk in a way that would run afoul of, I think it's 18-6-401, but any of the child abuse statutes, not the ones that cause physical harm, but there is one for putting them at risk and negligence and all that other stuff. Is that the thought process here, that I think this is tantamount to criminal child abuse?
Yeah, I believe that. And so do the statistics. If you're seeing this is not a healthy future. It's just not. And I get it. It's popular. It's heading that direction. I, Jimmy Graham, disagree.
Did law enforcement at all, when you chatted with them, did they at all express interest in or concern about that as well? Like, you know what? Maybe we ought to look at this. And I say it, I ask it in this context too. I remember being a young prosecutor, handling much smaller child abuse cases many, many moons ago. And there were cases where if someone had a completely filthy home, like, just unkept, trashed out home, unsafe at a lot of levels, they would be charged with child abuse under a negligence standard. Was there any discussion with law enforcement from you or your folks? And I don't know if it's Castle Rock PD or Douglas County Sheriff that's down there about, hey, this is like that. This just isn't physical. This is just mental or emotional.
It's strange because there was no conversation for that. And I believe that, it's much bigger. This is all connected. You know this from your background and who you are as a man, is that their job is to they're peace officers, to keep the peace, right? They're law enforcement. It's enforce the laws. But there's a sticky thing where, like, if we're making bad laws, they still have to enforce them. So this goes all the way up the chain, right? And they're just nervous because it's a kind of a newer thing. They're walking on rice paper, like, man, I'm not sure what to do here because there's going to be backlash, and we are so litigious in our society. What if I get sued? What about my business? I've had people call me, I stand with you, brother, but I work for the federal government, so I can't be there. Then you don't stand with me, right? I don't have a price tag. I don't work for the federal government. Nobody tells me where to stand, right? But I'm a law enforcement. I have law enforcement credentials still. I own a business. I work for a business. I would be fired. Okay, I'll stand for your kids too. But this is happening, and at some point you must take a stand. And actually, you don't have to take a stand at all. You can just watch it happen and then tell your grandchildren, and regret it later and say I did nothing. So that's okay. That's enough.
Jimmy, I'd keep talking to you all day. I just know you have to go, and I've taken you along in this segment. But I think you have gotten us to the point that is the question I want to explore with the listeners here too. And one is, what are your thoughts about this in terms of, is this the kind of action that we need to take in light of what's going on in the LGBTQ Pride Fest, thing? And does this rise to the level of some criminal violation? I'm fascinated by that discussion because it is different than what we've typically seen, but not completely foreign to the idea that what you expose your kids to can put them at risk. That is a fascinating thing. And so far, it doesn't sound like Castle Rock or Douglas County or really anybody else has moved forward with it, but that is a fascinating part of this conversation. And thank you for getting us there, Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, thank you. The commissioners in Douglas County, I just want to end with this. Commissioners in Douglas County just funded this. So they're funding suicide, in Jimmy Graham's opinion, and calling it suicide prevention. I absolutely disagree with my money, but with our taxpayer dollars. But the message that I would love to just leave you with is that, like I said, Jesus loves you, and so do I. I love all people, but I too get to have an opinion. I too get to have a stance on this, and I won't be canceled or erased.
Jimmy Graham, he is the man behind Able Shepard, also part of this group of dudes at the Pride Fest thing. I can't remember what day it is, Jimmy, but as this thing develops, and I think it'll keep developing because there are clearly efforts to cancel you and Able Shepard based on all of this stuff. I'd be interested to see how this thing progresses. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you for letting me talk, George.
Absolutely. Hey, that was Jimmy Graham. I do want to hear from you on this. And frankly, I want to have a conversation with Billy when we come back too, because Billy has some additional thoughts and questions on this as well. But I am intrigued by this suggestion that what is taking place here is the defense of these kids in opposition to decisions made by their parents to expose them to these things. Are we at that place? Do you agree with this? And if you don't, should nothing be done? Or if something should be done, what is it? I'm still trying to craft the question, but that was a fascinating conversation in my mind. Let's continue the conversation when we come back. We'll cut away for a break, and then I got to do some pay the bills stuff when we come back. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. Oh, yeah, our number 303-696-1971. 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Is it a crime? And if it's a crime, is it something that folks need to stand up and object to, independent of any law enforcement involvement or even acknowledgement? That's sort of what I'm left with thinking about. I mean, I'm not that intrigued by whether or not Able Shepard at all was somehow involved because it was an email chain that was used and Jimmy's the head. I'm not, that part is less interesting to me. What's interesting to me is these are dudes, 70 to 100 of them, who showed up and stood up because they believed that the kids that were brought there by their parents were being harmed and they were going to make their peace about it known. Is it a crime? Is it child abuse for parents to take their kids to these kind of Pride Fest events? Now, I didn't ask Jimmy this. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't say just Pride Fest in general isn't going to subject your kids to something. I think his answer would be no. But this particular thing, the drag queen, sexualized dudes dressed like women, all that other stuff, that is it a crime? 303-696-1971. Hey, have I ever told you before about a guy named Dan Caplis? Dan Caplis is one of the premier attorneys in this region of the United States. I would just say Colorado, but that he's more than that. He's probably the top guy in Colorado for what he does. He and Barbara Wahid, they represent victims and they fight for victims independent of any other judgment. They don't care anything about your political affiliation, your religion, even if you're not. They don't care about that. The prerequisite to getting one of the top attorneys in this region of the country to fight for you when someone else hurts you is you have to be a victim and you have to have a righteous case. And if you're that person or you know someone who is, go to this website, dancaplisLaw.com, dancaplis.law.com, and check out what they've done. Check out what they stand for. A guy doesn't hide the ball at all, tells you exactly who he is. And then pick up the phone and call him, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to feel like the underdog. You don't have to be stressed. Get a fighter for you in your corner today. That's dancaplisLaw.com. Let's go right to the phone lines. Brandon from Denver, you're on 710 KNUS. Brandon, what do you think?
Hey, George. Good conversation here. You know, it just comes to culture, okay? I'll put a couple things together and then tie it in. Let's say children working in factories. Let's say mini skirts, sunscreen, and chocolate chip cookies, okay? Now,
you've just described my trunk.
There you go. You know, depending on the time and place, you know, can kids be working in the factory? Well, it depends on the time and place. What parents allow mini skirts, who don't, haircuts? Does a child need sunscreen? Some parents say, we don't worry about sunscreen. Chocolate chip cookies, you know, here, have a banana instead. So when it comes to Able Shepard's and what he's doing, I you know, he's taking a stand. It's a culture issue. And it comes back to our society. I mean, do we want, you know, a city on a hill type of thing, a nice place, a lovely place? Or is it going to be something like, you know, ancient Rome, you know, Babylon, decadence? You know, I mean, it comes to the people, and there's going to be some battle, but then law enforcement, you know, they're going to do what the laws say and everything. So I like what you said. That's the next stage of this, is to see, it's going to come to the numbers and statistics. If there can be some data showing, hey, this type of involvement for a kid is leading to this 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, then parents can be informed, hey, you know what? Put that sunscreen on your kid. Hey, you know what? Let's cut back on the sugar. You know, let's do certain things so that there isn't harm now or in the future. And it's going to come to data. So we have to look at the data, and then the legislatures can, you know, put something together.
Brandon, first off, tell us where you come down on this. One, do you agree with what Jimmy and those other 70 to 100 dudes did back at the Pride Fest thing, as described on the show? And if you had known about it and had the time in your schedule, would you have joined them? If so, why? If not, why not?
You know, I agree with what they're doing. This is America. It's a melting pot. And, you know, a soup can have a different flavor, different seasoning, different colors and tints, shades. It's all a pot. And sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's red, green chili. I like green chili. So things move and flow. Okay, so he has a right to do what he's doing. Everything is in peace. There is lines that people can't cross on both sides of anything. I would not have been there with them personally. Not that I, you know, time. Even if I had time, I do things in other areas to do what I believe in. That's what he believes in, and he has to wake up and do that. By the way, because if Jimmy doesn't do that and he doesn't get an organization and provide a place for other people who feel like him to do that, then he's not being healthy to himself. He's not being a good citizen by opening the business and allowing employees to come and work with him. So he's doing the right thing for him. And Mr. Lee does other things, and George Brauchler does other things. So, hey, we all have the freedom to do what we need to do in this country.
Brandon, given all the, and I appreciate what you're saying about the cultural piece, and I do think that raises an interesting point, and that is things that we took for granted before, whether it was child labor and all that other stuff, as not being child abuse, and then, you know, society changed and said, no, we want to outlaw that. That could happen. But as you listen to this, this is how the sausage gets made, Brandon. My mind's just spinning here because I'm thinking we prosecute parents for malnourished kids, right? For not getting their kids enough food that they can be healthy. We do that. We prosecute parents for, in some cases, when they make decisions like, well, I'm not going to seek medical intervention for something that is clearly treatable by medicine. And they push back and say, well, this is our religious preference, or we don't want them to undergo this. The state still gets involved. So where I'm at, whether it's a crime or not, should the state get involved in objecting to or overriding a parent's decision to bring their kids to a drag show event? Now, I completely understand what Jimmy's saying about, hey, I think that this is bad, this is unnatural. And whether you agree or disagree, I understand what he's saying. The bigger question for me is, once we go down that road, what then can the state do to intervene between a parent and their child on other issues that don't result in physical or medical harm, but are things like, hey, you took your kid to a Trump rally? You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's an extreme example, but that's what I'm suggesting. What do you think about that?
You know, you took your kid to a CU football game, and there's a lot of alcohol in the stands. I mean,
true, and in the parking lot. Yeah,
exactly. You know, so, well, again, here's the thing. The people have the power. America is a great country. So here's the thing. Whether we're talking politicians at any level, whether we're talking kings or dictators or emperors, all these people, they all know at the end of the
Billy,
day.
Brandon, you can't hear him, but Billy yelled out into my ear, or queens, pun intended.
Queens, that's right. Queens, that's right. They're in the record too.
Yeah.
They all know, all leaders know. It's like the pyramid. People at the top know this thing does not stand if we don't have congruent or support the people. Okay, so the people, so Jimmy's organization, as well as the people doing the drag show, they are at the lower rung, and there is upheaval down there. So what ultimately will happen is enough upheaval, attention, et cetera, and people are going to get in the room, hash it out, and the leaders at the top, politicians, kings, queens, dictators, emperors, they're going to figure it out. And the scientists, spiritual leaders, activists, lobbyists, everybody gets in the room, and we figure out what's going to work. And that's how that's how the game is played.
My guess is, Brandon, and thank you, by the way, Brandon, for the very thoughtful call, but my guess is that room that you're describing is the country. I don't know. We're not going to get everybody into a room to agree on anything or even compromise at this point, but the conversation is real and legitimate. And I'm fascinated by the suggestion that taking your kids to a drag show could be a crime. And if not a crime, that it should warrant the state intervening in some way. Because, you know, there's a dependency and neglect action that's out there that doesn't even require criminal charges. Is this a dependency and neglect? Fascinating conversation. And I'm interested to have it with you at 303-696-1971. I get that we're a melting pot, but this feels like part of the soup is banning other parts of the soup. You know what I mean? Like the potatoes and the meats have gotten together against the carrots or the peas or something like that. And maybe I'm really stretching that analogy too far. But when I think of food, I think of, dang, it gets caught in my teeth a bunch. And while I'm fishing it out with my little, I've got those little, things in the car, the little plastic ones. The whole time I think to myself, who's going to love that I'm doing this, picking at the teeth and doing the flossing while I'm driving? Not anyone in the car with me, that's for sure. But Doctors Richter and Snyder, my dentists, because every time I go in, they say, hey, things look great. Gums look great. Here's where you got to work on the tartar stuff or whatever else that goes on. I love these folks and I want you to love them too. But the only way to do that is to convince you to try them out. I did. And now they're my regular dentist. That's who I go see at Twin Aspen Dental Center. And I think you need to also. They're so conveniently located at Parker Road and Stroh. Easy to get to, northeast, south, or west. I say check them out online at twinaspendentalcenter.com and see what they have to offer, which is everything, all the stuff you can imagine you'd want from a dentist. But you just need to go ahead and say, I'm going to take just a one-time break from my dentist. But here's the trick. It's not going to be one time. You're going to end up saying, I love it here. I love these people. They are so good to me. They are so professional, stress-free environment. I'm staying. So we're about to overwhelm Twin Aspen Dental Center, but I think they're ready for you. Give them a call, 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466, twinaspendentalcenter.com. When we come back, Charles, everybody else calling in with whatever time we have left. George Brauchler, 710, KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Want to give as much time as I can to Charles, Rapid City. You're on 710. Charles, what do you think?
Oh, hey, I'm actually in Denver. I guess I got an old phone number.
It just says Rapid City. So welcome.
Yeah, I got. Yeah, hey, George. Love the show. I listen to you every day. So I was wondering, from your experience, is there any law against exposing your kids to anything? Like, I can think of like negligence, but is there any sort of like endangerment?
Yes.
Yeah,
there is.
Protect the kids from.
Yeah, there are. So there's a couple different things. It could either be knowing or negligence, even if it doesn't result in some sort of physical harm that exists for misdemeanor child abuse on earth. I think it's 18-6-401. I could have screwed that up, but those statutes cover that kind of stuff. But it's usually applied to, cops get called out to a house and there's open drugs laying around, kids who are walking around, or there's a gun easily accessible. I haven't seen anything, or participation in a crime, by the way. Sometimes people have their kids, but I haven't seen anything quite like this.
Because I was wondering, I was trying to think of a religious example, but what about like the Boy Scouts? The Boy Scouts have a long history of sexual child abuse charges, and they've settled a lot of that stuff, and I know it's been in the news. If you want your kids to be involved in the Boy Scouts, is that willfully endangering them because you know that the organization has a history of abuse?
I'd say no, because that is not promoted behavior. It is behavior that they counsel against, and it's contrary to their other teachings and practices. Whereas this, if I were going to take the contrary view, I would say,
Sure,
this is what they exist for. They exist to promote these kinds of shows and expose these kids to that thing. So one, it's a bug. The other one, it's a feature.
okay. So these drag shows are intentionally targeted towards kids. These are advertised for kids.
Don't know.
Telling families
That's
bring your
a
kids.
great question. I don't know the answer to that, but people
Yeah,
are
see,
bringing
I
their
don't know.
kids to them. I just don't know.
Yeah. So see, I guess for me, it's one of those just like leave people alone kind of things. Obviously, they have the right to protest against pride events as long as they're not violent or disruptive or anything like that. And I of course support that. But I would hate the idea of, like you said, like stepping in to say you can't take your kids to a Trump rally or something, or you take your kids to an R-rated movie with your permission because there's a sex scene in it, or like it just seems like such overstepping to tell parents you can't take your kids to an event that you want to.
And this is my concern with these things is I can get on board on one example and then be like, oh my God, where does this go after this? Charles, I'm so sorry. Great phone call. Very thoughtful. Thank you. And please keep calling in, whether it's from Rapid City or Denver. Listen, we're going to come back after a quick break. When we come back, I believe we're going to be joined by Congressman Ken Buck from the Fightin' Fourth. Stick around to hear what he has to say. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here. Final hour of the show on this Thursday. Pleased to bring up a guy who has such limited time, but always is so generous with it. He is the congressman from the Fighting 4th Congressional District, my congressman, Ken Buck. Sir, thanks for joining us.
George, did you say limited intelligence or limited time?
Yes. Thanks for joining us. We spent I can't believe it took this much, but yesterday in the 7 o'clock hour, I set the stage for the letter that you wrote and that David Williams put out to the rest of the Republican community out there regarding this issue that had sort of been generated by a letter that the vice chair of the party in El Paso County had sent out. And it drove the conversation for like the next 2.5 hours. A lot of people weighing in with questions and comments and all this other stuff. I just can't thank you enough for coming on to help to address this particular part of the situation. And I'll lead with this. You probably know this. You're in the thick of it more than I am. So much of people's thoughts on this issue aren't really truly about this issue. It's about the greater sense of a two-tiered system and an injustice against Donald Trump and all these other things. And it feels, from my standpoint, like it causes them to want to believe every damn thing that someone says out there on the internet or on talk radio, and that your willingness to come forward and say, I get what you're saying. Let's take a look at the facts. It's caused some people to be like, whoa. So set the stage for us. This letter was sent out. And then what did you do in crafting this letter? And what was the goal?
So, George, here's sort of the backstory to it. When I speak in public, probably 1 out of 5 or 6 times, somebody will come up to me, typically a Republican, and they will say, Ken, and oftentimes very angry, they'll say, Ken, somebody that I know has been held without bond and they haven't been charged yet. And I say, give me the name. And they say, I'll get back to your staff. And I never get a name of somebody that has been held pending charges. And, finally, I saw this letter, and it was an opportunity to say, folks, there are really serious problems in this country. Our border is a mess, and Biden caused that mess. And inflation is a mess, and Biden caused that mess. And crime in the streets, especially in urban America, is a mess, and Biden caused that mess. And we've got to beat him. We've got to get him out of the White House, get a Republican in there so that we can actually make changes on the policies that are so important to the American people. This issue is just factually incorrect. And if we spend our time and energy on this issue, meaning the incarceration of the January 6th defendants, we are missing the opportunity to win the White House next November. And so that was the point of what I was trying to do.
What is your sense of what's feeding this? And I think what you're describing is a distraction, an unnecessary distraction from the real fight that should be taking place. Why is this taking on a life of its own, this narrative?
So let me, George, I think that I wouldn't necessarily use, I've used the word distraction, I think, in the letter, but I think dialogue in the Republican Party is important, and I think it is healthy, but it has to be based on facts. So the facts are that and you know this, we're prosecutors, and I think it probably makes your blood boil also when you hear that, you know, people are being held pending charges, because it just isn't true. But the fact is that the DC jail is a horrible place. It has civil rights suit after civil rights suit because of the terrible conditions there. They're not targeting January 6th prisoners with those terrible conditions. Those are conditions that existed for decades and will continue to exist, and are really a symptom of a broken system in DC more than anything else. And so I want to make sure that we don't minimize what's happening to these January 6th prisoners. Those conditions are terrible. There are a lot of those cases that have been prosecuted by the Department of Justice that you or I would not prosecute.
That's right.
There are people. There are some terrible people who broke windows and you know, engaged in assaults on police officers. Those people absolutely should be prosecuted. Some people wandered into the building. You know, the police officers were standing at the doors, and some people wandered into the building. And I wouldn't charge trespass in that situation. I don't think you would.
Nope.
Focus on the people who are real criminals and who deserve to be prosecuted. And so that's that's another point, I guess, that I was trying to make.
One of the things that stuck out to me was when you highlighted, listen, there aren't hundreds of people being held without bond. There are 20 people currently, 85% of whom are being held on felony charges of assaulting the police, and another 15% who are being held on some variation of weapons charges, apparently, that took place on January 6th. I put that information out by reading your letter, and then some folks texted in, some folks even called in and said, well, I don't believe it. I don't believe that. I think he's relying on left-leaning media for that information. What do you say to that?
Well, what I'm relying on is a database that the Department of Justice has posted on its website that lists every defendant that has been charged for the crime relating to January 6th, the status of that defendant, whether they were held on bond. You can look and see that no defendant was incarcerated as a result of a misdemeanor charge. Only defendants with felony charges. And so the answer to that, false information is go and look at those defendants, those 20 defendants that are still being held. You can contact the defense attorneys. I mean, they're going to give you reliable information on those defendants. You can go look at court documents. Those are public documents. Go look at the charges and see what the charges are. It's 20 people. My goodness. The state of Arizona did a recount on the 2020 election. Certainly someone can go and look up 20 indictments on a public website for the DC courts. So yeah, it is verifiable information that's on that website.
We're talking with Congressman Ken Buck from the 4th Congressional District. Some folks texted in saying, well, hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene went and visited these or tried to, maybe she did. I don't know if she was successful in visiting these people in jail. Has Congressman Buck done it? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Marjorie did do it, and she did have access to them, and she did talk to them. And frankly, I have a lot of things to do, and I'm not going to go to the DC jail and talk to a bunch of people who assaulted police officers. My sympathy is not with people who beat up cops. My sympathy is not with people who destroy a building that I consider sacred, the U.S. Capitol. My sympathy are not with people who want to stop a congressional function, which is counting the votes in an election. That's not where my sympathies lie. And I'm not going to spend my time going there. You and I have been to a lot of jails. I've been to jails and murder scenes, prisons before they were allowed to release the murder scene. I've been to a lot of places that is not where I'm going to spend my time.
I think the other part of this too, and you brought it up earlier, that makes maybe us a little more acutely sensitive to these allegations is you take seriously the vast authority that you have when you're a prosecutor. And you've been something I haven't. I was a special assistant U.S. attorney, but that was in my capacity in the military. You were an assistant U.S. attorney. You've done the federal thing. You were the elected DA up in Weld County, the second best judicial district in the state. And you understand how important it is in your role as protecting the rights of even the people that you accuse of violating the law. And so if someone had ever come to you with me and said, hey man, we got someone in jail that is just hanging out there and hasn't been charged. One, I can't envision that happening because the system would correct itself. But if you found that out or thought someone was being held on something less than was constitutional, you would act immediately. You wouldn't be like, well, let's talk about it tomorrow at the staff meeting. You'd pick up the phone and go, Sheriff, what the hell's going on? You'd move. And so to suggest that there's a system that's set in place here in DC where we've just thrown people in a well and basically said, good luck, folks. We'll let you know. Like it's Gitmo or a black site somewhere. It's kind of annoying and offensive.
It is annoying and offensive, George. And the bottom line is that anybody at the Bureau of Prisons, the federal correctional system that would do that would be prosecuted. That is a crazy concept that they would be filling out false documents, making false statements, and subjecting themselves to every false statement a 5-year maximum prison sentence because they wanted to, get back at people in some way. It is ridiculous. But the other thing that I think is real important, George, is the Republican Party for decades has stood for the rule of law. We have criticized the left for defunding the police. We have criticized the left for promoting the riots that occurred in 2020, where arson and assaults were happening across the United States. We have criticized the left for their victimhood, where they are saying, poor us, we're victims of this terrible capitalist racist system that we have. And then we start acting like victims in situations like this, and we start criticizing law enforcement and there are bills now in Congress by Republicans to defund the FBI, to defund ATF, to defund these agencies. My goodness, if we did away with the FBI tomorrow, the terrorists around the world would be celebrating.
Oh yeah, right.
The idea that somehow Republicans are against law enforcement is just a crazy idea.
Let's stretch that comment out just a little bit further. And again, I didn't say, hey, I was going to ask you about this. I'm sure Joe right now is like, don't do it. But Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and said, we played the sound yesterday, that she's like, I'm not voting for any budget bill, no continuing resolution, nothing that doesn't involve the defunding of Jack Smith's special counsel office and everything that he's doing. Do you feel similarly about that issue as you do to defunding the FBI and the ATF and the DEA, et cetera?
So George, when I was teaching law school, I learned and taught certain constitutional principles. When Marjorie Taylor Greene was teaching CrossFit, she learned a whole different set of values, evidently, because my idea of what this country should be like is based on the Constitution. And she sees the world differently. She's criticized me for, voting to certify the election in 2020. The Constitution says Congress shall count the votes. It doesn't say Congress may overturn an election result. It doesn't say Congress can do whatever the heck it wants with this election. Shall count the votes. That's what the Constitution says. In her CrossFit class, maybe they didn't cover that. And the Constitution also says that, the impeachment of a president shall be based on treason, high crimes, misdemeanors. It doesn't say it's a political exercise,
right?
And we hope that it does the right thing. And so I get tired of people. One of the beauties of Congress is you bring 435 people together from different backgrounds and you try to reach a consensus on issues. When you've got people who care more about their social media accounts than they do about the Constitution, we have a real problem in Congress.
Along those lines, and again, I didn't say I was going to ask you about this, but it just happened, right? You may have heard, I don't imagine you've had any time to read through it, but you may have heard that a group of individuals, private citizens, filed a lawsuit against Jenna Griswold, our Secretary of State, to try to keep Donald Trump off of the primary ballot, and I presume then by extension the general election ballot. Have you given any thought under the 14th Amendment? That's Section 3. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's another example of how people are trying to suppress the vote. The voters can decide if Donald Trump is qualified to be president, is qualified to be, to lead this country. It's not necessary to try to hold somebody off the ballot. The facts on January 6th, the facts of President Trump's leadership in office and the facts on President Biden's leadership in office are going to be well known to voters, and they will make a decision. And I have a feeling if the election were held today, President Trump would probably beat President Biden, because President Biden has been horrible in office, and his age is a serious concern, and his status. I'm sure there's a lot of 80-year-olds that are very energetic and with it. President Biden does not portray that kind of being, and this issue of if you've been involved in January 6th, we're going to call it an insurrection and we're going to keep you off the ballot. The issue has been tested in Georgia and several other states with members of Congress, and it has failed every single time. And so I don't think it's going to be successful in Colorado, and nor do I think it should be successful in Colorado.
Just because I want to create some parity with you and MTG, what's your highest box jump? I'm kidding. And then I was going to ask you about pull-ups, but I don't want to go down that road. I talked to Chris Murray, Chris well, party's attorney for a long time. And he said, listen, not only is it bad in terms of all the other things you mentioned, he's like, the Constitution, Section 5 of Amendment 14 makes it pretty clear. Only Congress has the ability to do what they're trying to do through this lawsuit. And I thought, why don't I just read the damn Constitution? Because it makes it pretty clear. It's up to Congress. I don't even think they have standing to bring the lawsuit.
Right. Yeah. And Chris gets paid a lot of money to do that kind of thinking, and that's why we talk to Chris about things before we act. But yes, I think that this is frivolous. It makes a point, but it is not something that is going to be successful.
Congressman Ken Buck, my congressman from the Fighting Fourth, thanks for taking time out of your busy day. Are you in the swamp right now, or are you headed back to America?
No, I'm in God's country, brother. I'm in God's country.
Oh, my man, I should have just tried to figure out a way to get Joe to drug you and bring you into the studio next time. Thanks for joining us on air. Keep doing the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, buddy.
Good luck on your jump rope. Yeah, that was CrossFit Ken Buck, also Congressman Ken Buck. What did you hear there? And in light of the conversation that we had yesterday, what are your thoughts? 303-696-1971. Does your mind change at all? I mean, I thought his answers, I just appreciate how damn candid Ken is when he comes on, and made it very clear a couple things. One, he and MTG are not going to be exchanging Christmas cards. That's my best guess. But at the same time, I mean, the guy was unequivocal. I'm not going to go visit a bunch of cop assaulters in jail. I don't have any sympathy. I'll be honest, that resonates with me. What else did you hear in there? And does it change at all your thoughts from yesterday or add to your questions? Let us know. 303-696-1971. Got at least a line open. Billy's talking with someone pretty energetically right now. Before I cut away for a break, I got to tell you about Mitch Floria with the Art of Granite. Mitch is a guy who is going to make your house look and feel brand new, even if it isn't. And he does that by upgrading your kitchen countertop. Maybe you're redoing the kitchen. Maybe you're redoing the bathroom. This guy's got such an incredible selection. And I've told him this before. The website's misleading. It says the Art of Granite, but it's so much more than granite. It's granite, it's quartz, it's marble, it's man-made, it's God-made. All the beautiful things that he has available. Some of them can be seen online, but it just doesn't do it justice. You got to go out to his place out there at about Colfax and 6th Avenue. Walk in, take a look around. And if you dare to make eye contact with Mitch and shake his hand, it's over. Bring your credit card or bring your Apple Pay or whatever, because you're going to close the deal with this guy. So compelling, such a compelling story, such an earnest, kind person. And you can just tell from talking with him and looking around, he's a values-based guy, man. And he lets you know that not just in the words that he uses and the guarantees that he makes, but in this. He's going to extend you the wholesale prices that he gets. But he's also going to say, hey, if you're a 710 listener, and you've got to tell him that, he's going to reward you. And he's going to say, me too. So I'm going to throw in the bathroom countertop with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you just want to do one, or you're finishing the basement, you want to do it, throw in the sink for free with that kitchen countertop package, or with whatever that package is that you get. Give him a look at theartofgranite.com, and then give him a call on his cell phone, 303-386-5919, 386-5919. That's Mitch Floria at the Art of Granite. When we come back, Ben, the other two lines are going, but keep trying to get in there at 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. That pain in your joints, I imagine it's not from MTG's CrossFit class. That was a great interview with Ken Buck. I really appreciate him making the time and coming on and bringing the tea and the candor, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, 303-696-1971. But one way to address that pain is through pills. I'm not a fan. The other is to get a doctor to cut you open. I'm less a fan of that. I think I'd do the pills first. But the cutting on you, probably more permanent. But I know there's a third option. That third option is regenerative medicine. That's where they take a needle and they put it in you and they take out the good stuff that helps solve the problem in the other places and they put it back into you. Now, QC Kinetix, our friends out there, have been doing this border to border, coast to coast for a long time now. The success stories are real. The rave reviews also real. And the local medical professionals that they make available to you for the questions, they're just a phone call away. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. I'll give it to you one more time in a second. But you can also check out what they have to offer at QC Kinetix, begins with a K, ends with an X, QCkinetix.com, or give them a call and ask them. I'll try to stump them. 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. That's QC Kinetix. Going to go right back to the phone lines. It's Ben from Morrison. You're on 710 KNUS. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad you got Ken Buck on there. You know, it's a little disheartening to see that there's so few Republicans out there these days that will actually just speak the truth and actually give out facts, you know, because I was listening to your show yesterday and it was just goober after goober after goober caller. And you kept pressing them on what information do you have? How can you back this up? And none of them could do it. Well, not like a single one of them.
And Ben, I don't know that they're goobers, but I do think they're part of a large group of people for whom whatever they have witnessed that feeds that emotion makes it easier for them to accept the conclusions drawn by other smaller pieces of information, whether that information is accurate or not, right? Like some of what they believe is true. And that is, yes, there are obviously parts of the system that are not working the way they should. It feels like there's a two-tiered system, but I part company with them when they say the tiers are based on R's and D's. I don't believe that at all. I mean, the two-tiered system is the politically elite and rich versus you and me. You know what I mean? There's just two systems.
Yeah, there is two systems, and that's exactly what it is. Like if you're a rich kid that's going to, you know, Harvard or Duke and on the lacrosse team, and your parents have, you know, $5 million in a trust fund, you know, you're probably going to do a little bit better in the legal system than some poor, you know, 18-year-old black kid who has a public defender. Like that is the reality.
That, although our public defender system is pretty awesome. What was your takeaway though from what Ken said? I mean, he's no fan of Biden. Obviously, he's a guy that clearly is invested in the idea that what Biden has done, and I agree with this, has left America in a much more tenuous position moving forward, especially with the border and the fentanyl and all the other stuff. But his point in drafting that letter was, and he didn't want to continue to push the distraction thing, but like this is not where the fight is. The fight is not on these 20 cop beating criminals that are being held in DC jails, as horrible as the DC jail. The fight is somewhere else. What was that influential at all to you?
My take on that is that the Republican Party needs to stop pandering to misinformation, and stop just being so gullible and listening to a lot of this junk that's out here. Do a better job of filtering through your info. I mean, I did speech and debate through high school, and that was one of the best takeaways that I got out of that. Was we had to process like a lot of different information. We get it from, you know, 3 or 4 different sources, you know, look at it and see, okay, what's accurate, what's not, what's biased, what's not, okay, what's the slant here, you know, and we filter through that stuff. And I'm dealing with like adults now who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s that lack that skill. They just absolutely lack it. And it's very frustrating. And I see it so much more on the right than on the left.
Really? I don't know if I agree that the right is somehow more prone or demonstrably more susceptible to the misinformation piece. I think what makes it harder, by the way, is from where I sit, the media, the mainstream media, the legacy media, whatever terminology you want to use, definitely leans left. And so it feels like I can't trust that amount of information, but the folks on the left, they gobble it all up. And so it forces folks to go to other places to try to find something they think is more credible or more truthy, for lack of a better term. And I think that's what makes them susceptible. It's that you can't trust NBC or MSNBC or CNN anymore because the way they conducted themselves over the last 4 or 5 years. That's my sense of it.
But there's slant, and then there's obvious like falsehoods. Like, for example, Fox just got sued for $780 million, by Dominion for basically promoting something that they obviously knew was false.
You're talking about the stolen election stuff and Dominion and all that other stuff with the voting machines. I actually think they settled for that. I think they got sued for a ton more than that. There's something to that. There's certainly something to that, and it speaks to another problem with media, and that is that they want to feed their viewers. You know what I mean? They seem less tethered to the accuracy of what they're saying than they do in trying to feed the emotion of the people that are out there watching it.
Yeah, but like if I go and watch or listen to something like NPR, I know what I'm getting because generally their news is actually pretty spot on, but then they have these personal stories that I know slant left. So they'll have a transgender person talk about something. So I know where that's going to the left, but the news is generally pretty dry and bland on programs like that. It's just like your little cutaways with CBS News, that you do in the hourly, generally that's not really a whole lot of slant. Either way, they're just reporting what happened.
Ben, can I transition you to another topic that we covered earlier today? I don't know if you were able to listen, but I had Chris Murray on to talk about this lawsuit you may be aware of that was filed by some current and former Republicans against Jenna Griswold and Donald Trump to try to keep him off the ballot under a claim of the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Now, if you're not familiar at all with whatever the hell I'm talking about, then that's fine. I'm not going to opinion anything. But if you are
I'm familiar.
Okay, well, what are your thoughts?
I think it's kind of a flimsy lawsuit. I don't see that going forward really anywhere. I think it's something they're probably going to lose on. I don't see Donald Trump winning. He might win a primary in Colorado, but I don't see him winning, in the general here. I can't remember how much he lost by last time, if it was 14 points or 15
here
points.
In Colorado, it was crazy. It could have been 16 points. I mean, it was really, really bad.
So
I appreciate that. I think, and this is my impression, speaking just from my own response to this, but if they were to do this, if they were to try to keep him off the ballot, whether or not I want to see him on the general election ballot or not, it would piss me off so much. I would probably become a very motivated pro-Trump campaign guy, just because my response would be, you are rigging the system now. I believe the election last time was free and fair. I believe that. But if you're going to now go through the mechanisms of government to keep this guy from even being an option for voters, well, you just turned me into a supporter of his, an enthusiastic supporter, because who the hell are you to try to keep me from being able to vote for this guy? I think there's probably a lot of other Republicans out there who right now are like, nah, let's see. But they would become super motivated. Do you think any unaffiliated would feel that way? It bothers me that someone's out there trying to say you're not entitled to vote for this person.
Well, I don't think that case is going to go anywhere, but I do think some of his legal pickles might end up going somewhere. I don't know how long it's going to be able to delay
indictments
those
and all that stuff.
Yeah, that one. I agree with you that the Mar-a-Lago one is the one where they really have him dead to rights.
What's the possible defense to that one? I mean, the others I can see it, but this one I'm like, dude, they got you, man. What's left?
Yeah. But I don't know. He might be able to delay that out and prolong it out and, do motions and other different things to just, drag it out through the election. But I think they have him dead to rights on that one. I feel like you do. The other ones, I think about, some of the things are valid, like getting the fake slates of electors and things like that. But a lot of the other stuff is kind of hard to prove because you have to prove intent, and I don't know. it's a little bit more difficult. You have to place like state of mind and other things like that. But
I wrote a column that's going to come out, I think tomorrow, in the Gazette that basically said, and it echoed something Ken Buck said that also resonates with me. And that is, how did Republicans, the law and order party, become the party of defund law enforcement? And in the case of Jack Smith's thing, even if you disagree with what he's doing, the idea that, hey, we just don't like it and we don't trust the system to generate a just outcome in the time that we want, so we're just going to defund it. There's that effort too down in Georgia that I talked about, where they're trying to invoke this new Senate Bill 92 set of powers, where some appointed committee, appointed all by Republicans, by the way, is going to sit in judgment as to whether Fani Willis can continue on as DA. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Let the system play out, right? Like, let's see how if you don't trust our system to work, what's left?
Yeah, they're trying to pull her just because they don't like what she's doing. And it's not based on merits. It's not based on,
and
the
not
evidence or
trusting
anything
jury
like that.
trials. They don't even trust juries. I mean, I've heard people say, well, he can't get a fair trial in DC. Maybe, but let's find out, right? Like, this dude is, super well known across the planet Earth. Let's see if he can get a fair trial. And then if not, we can move it during jury selection. But this idea that, well, you can't even bring it in DC. You can't even bring it in Fulton County. Like, we don't trust juries anymore, that the defendant has a hand in picking. We can't trust them. Like, we are setting fire to institutions that have been tested over and over again, tweaked and improved over 200 plus years. And we're setting them on fire over this dude. What?
Yeah. And if you feel violated, that's what the appellate process is for.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. But we can't trust them either. Apparently, we can only trust the Supreme Court that has a majority of conservatives, 3 of whom were appointed by. We can only trust them. We can't trust anyone below them. I mean, man, I'm worried about the future. Ben, as always, very thoughtful phone call. I know a bunch of people are going to be out there thinking to themselves, I didn't ban this. Call in 303-696-1971. Or if you're thinking to yourself, man, when can I pick up the phone and call someone who will make me smarter on real estate because I want to get out of my house and into another one? The segues just keep getting better. Call Gay Ribble at Empower Home Team at Keller Williams. I told you about Gay earlier, but I want to emphasize this part of it. They sell so many more homes than other realtors. Like, they've got the connections, they've got the knowledge, the expertise. You know what that means for you? More money in your pocket. Something like, on average, $30,000 more in your pocket for the sale of your home. That's real money. That's like a month's salary for Billy right here at the radio station. I'm completely kidding. That may be 2 years' salary for Billy. I don't know. But $30,000 extra dollars, they sell them faster than other realtors. And they make you promises. That's how confident they are. They're like, look, we'll promise to sell your house at a certain price within a certain period of time, or we'll make it right with the dollars if we don't. They provide a whole ton of free information because they're not afraid of you going and getting it. They want you to have it so that you're a better client, a better purchaser. Why not give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. Call them today. Check them out at gayhasthebuyers.com. And she does 14,600 something of them now. I've lost count. Gayhasthebuyers.com. When we come back, your texts, your calls. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Lots and lots of texts running the gamut, as you can imagine. Some folks say this one as well. Buck sounds like a blah. He didn't need to attack MTG about CrossFit. I thought it was funny. Someone said homosexual. This is back from, I think this is the top of the hour. So right as Ken was calling it, homosexuality and bestiality has been tried for thousands of years in the human race. It goes against men's law and the law of nature. It's not good for the mind or the body or the soul. It never worked in the past with the Greeks and Romans. And then said this young man, I presume it was Ben, is a babe in the woods. He should go back. I'd love to call him, but you yell at me, and I don't. If you're not related to me, I don't yell at you. That's
just point of information. I understand everybody talking about it's against laws of nature. Then what you're going to have to do is explain to me how we have identified currently 1,500 animal species that all exhibit homosexual behavior in exactly the same percentages as it exists in humanity.
But they're all at the San Francisco Zoo.
Yes.
That's totally different, my friend.
But the issue is, if we're talking about what is against nature's law, you got to then explain to me why then it exists in nature. And it's not because the otters and the wolves and the goats are showing up at the drag shows. I'm just saying that's not it. So just help me get there. If you think it is against the law of nature, then show me why it exists in nature.
9:53, Billy drops the thermonuclear gay bomb on the animals and stuff like that.
But we can get to that part later. So, okay. Back to the normally scheduled part of the program.
Speaking of something else that's against nature, and that is intervene when nature tries to gum up your teeth, or maybe they've given you some poor tartar control issues. I've got some tartar things that I got to deal with too, or they create, as with me, wisdom teeth that have a gap in it that will apparently hold an entire sandwich. I don't know. I've constantly got to be diligent about those things. Think about your dentist. Think about what can you do to put yourself in a position to make those choppers of yours last your entire life. Some folks can't. I understand that. But if you want the best shot at keeping your teeth and keeping your health, and oh, by the way, making that awesome smile even awesomer, then you're going to call my friends at Twin Aspen Dental Center. They're not just my friends. They're my dentist, Doctors Richter and Snyder. And I think Shiloh's the only hygienist I've had so far. She has been wonderful, but that whole staff just seems so nice, welcoming, inviting, creating a stress-free environment where they can advance your health. Now, they do all the good stuff, the Invisalign, the crowns, the bridges, the things I'm leaving out because I just haven't had to have them yet. They do it. Why not check them out? Take a break from your current dentist, not because they've done anything wrong, but because you're looking for something that might be a little righter. And that is to drive down there at the Twin Aspen Dental Center offices right about Stroh Road in Parker. Or you can give them a call at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466, or try them at twinaspendentalcenter.com. All 4 words put together, twinaspendentalcenter.com. Now, listen, we have an opportunity here. I've got a bunch of texts. My sweet goodness, man. Here's what happened again. Text stopped coming in. That just doesn't sound like our show. I refreshed the page. Kablooey, another 20 plus texts just showed up. So, if I didn't get to yours, please forgive me. Keep coming back. This thing, I don't know how to describe it. Some days it's on fire. Some days the fire can't be seen until I refresh the page, but it's been fantastic, the interaction. Now, before I go, point of personal privilege here. I am with you instead of being in Staten Island, New York right now for a funeral ceremony for my aunt, my dad's oldest sister. He's the second of 4. And she passed away just this past weekend. In fact, maybe it was the day before I was headed up to Montana to go to that other funeral for my friend Dale's dad. Aunt Lois passed away. She was one of the funniest, warmest, most accepting people that I've ever met. She was a wonderful, wonderful aunt. And I'm sorry I didn't get to spend more time with her in her waning days. But my dad is out there now. His sister, Aunt Linda's out there. My Uncle Bob is out there. And I wish I could be out there with them, but duty calls here and I'm not able to be with them. But that doesn't mean I can't tell you what a wonderful person that she was, and her 3 great kids, Anthony, Michael, Gina. They're all just wonderful, wonderful kids who've gone on to have great families themselves. She was a great aunt, a great, great grandmother, and just a great person. So Aunt Lois, I can't be there for you, but congrats for a life well lived. And Dad, I'm sorry for your loss. And I know you'll keep moving on, man. I know it's just that season for life and death. And we'll get through it all together. Listen, we'll be back tomorrow. Billy and I will, as long as the FCC and the Salem gods haven't turned us off. That's from 6 to 10 a.m. We go live and local at 3 with Big Deb Flora. And then today, Randy Corcoran filling in for Stephen Tubbs. Got to stick around for that one as well. Until tomorrow, you've been listening to me. My name is George. This is the George Brauchler Show at 710 KNUS.